Chapter 196. While Lin Xin was being forced by Lin Xin to fight, Long Haochen welcomed two guests. "Hello, Holy Knight Captain." When Long Haochen opened the door, the guests outside had already bowed to him respectfully. It was Tan Wan and Xin Yuan Yin. Tan Wan's expression was normal, but Xin Yuan Yin seemed a little awkward. He lowered his head slightly, unwilling to look at Long Haochen. Long Haochen looked at them in surprise. "You two are." Tan Wan was no longer as arrogant and cold as before. She smiled and said, "Can you let us in talk?" "Please." Long Haochen stepped aside and invited the two into the room. At this time, he was still wearing the golden foundation armor. In order to hide his identity, he did not easily take off the armor even when he was training alone in the room. Fortunately, the golden foundation armor was very comfortable on him, and he did not feel uncomfortable. "Holy Knight Captain, we are here to apologize to you. What happened that day was my fault. At the same time, I thank you for your help in Jialing Pass. I am sorry." As she spoke, Tan Wan bowed respectfully to Long Haochen. This was no longer an etiquette that belonged to mages. It was a big etiquette between peers. Xin Yuan Yin similarly bowed at the side, but his actions seemed to be slightly more forceful. After the battle that day, Long Haochen was once again summoned by the Magic Temple's master, Li Zhengji. No one knew what they talked about, but not long after, the Magic Temple made an announcement, announcing the heroic deeds of the acting Holy Knight Captain Jean 12 of the Knights Templars. They also said that the Magic Temple would forever remember this deep friendship. Long Haochen smiled and said, "You two don't have to do this. You did not do anything wrong. I only hope that the relationship between the Magic Temple and the Knights Templars can be improved in the near future. When that time comes, I will need the support of both of you." Tan Wan didn't respond to his words. Instead, she changed the topic. "Holy Knight, I heard that you're leaving, right?" Long Haochen nodded. "Jialing Pass is impregnable. I'll go to the other temple to have a look. I'll be leaving tomorrow morning." After a moment of silence, Tan Wan suddenly said, "Chief Holy Knight, I have a presumptuous request." Long Haochen was taken aback. "Please go ahead." Tan Wan said, "I wish to challenge you one-on-one." He didn't use any weapons or equipment and relied on his own abilities. "I know that my cultivation is far from being comparable to yours, but I really want to know how big the gap between us is." At this point, she seemed to be afraid that Long Haochen would misunderstand. She continued, "Ever since I became a magician, I've been doing my best to cultivate, with Master as my goal. I hope to become a strong person like Master in the future, to fight for the Alliance, to fight for humanity, and to completely eliminate the demons. I just hope that you can become another goal for me to pursue. I'm just asking for your guidance, nothing else." Long Haochen thought for a moment and said, "All right. In that case, please find a secluded place, Commander Tan. Also, don't let there be any spectators." "Okay." Tan Wan seemed to understand Long Haochen's concerns and readily agreed. Xin Yuan Yin wanted to say something, but in the end, he held back. Long Haochen didn't inform Han Yu and Kai Er. He followed Tan Wan and Xin Yuan Yin to a wide door on the 4th floor of the Magic Temple. Tan Wan said to Xin Yuan Yin, "Wait for me here." Xin Yuan Yin suddenly looked at Long Haochen with a pleading look. Long Haochen said apologetically, "Commander Xin Yuan, you will understand my difficulties in the future. Commander Tan, please." Tan Wan pushed the door open and entered with Long Haochen. This was a wide training field. It was circular and had no spectator's platform. It was about 50 meters in diameter. For a magician's attack range, this place wasn't very large. "This is the place where the temple conducts the tests. With Xin Yuan standing guard outside, no one will disturb us." As she spoke, Tan Wan flicked her wrist, and the staff in her hand disappeared into thin air. Immediately afterward, she pulled open the front of her robe and took off the mage robe that was emitting intense magical waves. She stored it in her storage ring, revealing a green dress underneath. Today, she proposed this challenge to Long Haochen because she wanted to see how big the gap was between her and Long Haochen. That day, when Long Haochen used the Prayer of Light to stop the descent of hell, the shock was too strong for her. With her eyesight, she could naturally see that Long Haochen had used a divine weapon at that time. In Tan Wan's heart, she still couldn't accept it. If he didn't use epic equipment like the divine weapon and the adamantine foundation armor, how much stronger could he be? She really wanted to know the answer. Long Houchin and the others were about to leave. Tan couldn't hold back her curiosity any longer and went to look for Long Houchin. She first expressed her regret because she didn't want it to affect her mentality in this challenge. Long Houchin said, "Leader Tan, after this competition, whether I win or lose, I have a request. I hope to get your help." Tan was stunned. "What request?" Long Houchin smiled slightly. "Let's talk about it after the competition is over." "Okay," Tan said as she walked straight to the side of the trial field. Both of them didn't wear any equipment, but relatively speaking, the knight was at a disadvantage compared to the magician. This was because the knight not only had equipment, but also had a mount. In a situation where they didn't use any equipment, their cultivation would be greatly weakened. On the other hand, the magician didn't use equipment, so the effect was much simpler. However, Tan obviously didn't want to take advantage of Long Houchin, so she chose this trial field with a diameter of only 50 meters, which was disadvantageous to the magician. Under such circumstances, the weakening of both sides was proportionally more or less the same. Golden light flowed, and the golden foundation armor on Long Houchin's body retreated like a ripple. He didn't release any of his heavy swords, and just faced it head-on. At the same time, he retreated to the opposite side of the trial field from Tan. Looking at Long Houchin's young and handsome appearance, Tan couldn't help but be a little absent-minded. Handsome men didn't have much of an impact on her. In terms of feelings, she didn't think too much about it. Her goal was to improve her cultivation. So, she was only shocked by Long Houchin's age. Even though this was the second time she saw it, the shock didn't diminish in the slightest. "Holy Knight, I'm going to start," Tan said in a low voice. "Please." A pair of green spiritual wings appeared on Tan back almost instantly. Then, she pointed at Long Houchin with her right hand, and dozens of green wind blades shot towards Long Houchin like flying knives. Each of these wind blades had their own path, some in a straight line, some in an arc, and some even circled around from the side. They almost blocked all of Long Houchin's escape routes. Long Houchin put his hands behind his back and took a step forward with his left foot. Then, his body suddenly swayed in a strange rhythm. Puff, 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 puff. A series of spiritual power collided. In the dazzling green light, Long Houchin just walked out with his hands behind his back. That's right, he walked out. From the beginning to the end, he didn't release any spiritual power or launch a counterattack. As the attacker, Tan felt it the clearest. Long Houchin used a strange footwork that seemed slow but was actually fast. He was always able to avoid the wind blades by a hair's breadth, and he was always able to cause two wind blades to collide with each other and dissolve themselves. This process seemed simple, but whether it was his control of his body, his judgment, or his speed, they all made Tan gasp in amazement. This was the first time she knew that someone could actually use this method to avoid her wind blades. Of course, as the direct disciple of the wind elementalist, her attack had only just begun. At the same time that Long Houchin walked out of the wind blades, Tan kept chanting incantations, and balls of green light shot out from her fingertips. The green light turned into small tornadoes that were only about a foot tall and flew towards Long Houchin. There were a total of 12 small tornadoes, filling the entire training field with a series of strange whooshing sounds. They flew towards Long Houchin at different speeds, and the dense wind elemental essence in the air became more and more violent. A one-on-one battle between a mage and a knight could not be won with the most powerful spell, but with the most suitable spell. The 12 tornadoes that Tan cast looked the same, but their actual power was completely different. Each small tornado was equivalent to a level 6 spell. After unleashing the 12 tornadoes, her pretty face turned pale. After all, this was without the help of any magical equipment, and with her mid-level 7 cultivation, it was already the best she could do. Among these tornadoes, some were in a straight line, some were in reverse, and some were chaotic. Every one of them was different. Moreover, once one of them exploded, the other tornadoes would be instantly attracted and would descend on the enemy almost at the same time. In terms of a single spell, these 12 small tornadoes could form a compound spell, and if its power was fully unleashed, it would be comparable to the power of a level 8 group spell. Long Houchen's advance came to a halt, and the 12 tornadoes swept towards him from different directions. He raised his right hand, and a white light spread out from his palm, turning into a heavy sword about 4 feet long. Then Long Houchen actually closed his eyes. He took a step forward with his left foot, and a heavy sword in his hand that was completely condensed from spiritual energy slowly slashed out. Condensing spiritual energy into energy? No, Long Houchen's cultivation had not reached that level yet, and he was still unable to release the Ling Gang in this way. Therefore, what he was actually holding in his hand was actually a skill, the Holy Sword. The power of the Holy Sword released with a hand, as the hilt would obviously be greatly limited, but under the blessing of Long Houchen's pure light element, it looked not much different from a real light heavy sword. His slash looked light, and his movement was not fast, but it still hit the first tornado that flew towards him. However, Tan Wan, who was in the distance, had a hint of smugness on her face. No matter how strong you are, as long as you trigger one of my tornadoes, then my tornado formation will be instantly activated. I'd like to see how you can resist my level 8 spell without any defensive equipment. However, the smugness on Tan Wan's face only lasted for a moment, and in the next moment, it turned into astonishment. Long Houchen's sword cut into the tornado, but he didn't cause it to explode. It seemed that the tornado, which was filled with tyrannical cutting power, had become an extension of his arm and was directly lifted by his arm. Long Houchen's aura also disappeared. At this moment, he had actually completely integrated into the surrounding wind element, so that the other 11 tornadoes only revolved around his body, but did not attack him. His right arm trembled slightly, and Long Houchen's body made a shaking motion. Immediately after, the tornado at the front of his arm turned into spots of green light and dissipated into the air. The Holy Sword was still there. When the first tornado disappeared, the other 11 immediately sensed it, and all attacked Long Houchen in the center. It was also at this moment that Long Houchen's body, which had been moving slowly, suddenly sped up. At the critical moment, the Holy Sword in his hand stabbed out 11 times. The 11 tornadoes stopped in midair almost at the same time, and the next moment, they all turned into spots of green light and disappeared. With a flash, Long Houchen crossed a distance of tens of meters with a single step and arrived in front of Tan Wan. Tan Wan almost instinctively raised her arms and punched at Long Houchen. Her hands were surrounded by green light, and the speed of her punches was actually quite fast. It was actually a martial technique. With regard to her attack, Long Houchen was not surprised at all. However, he did not block it, and only allowed Tan Wan's fist to strike his chest. Bang bang. 2 muffled sounds rang out, but Long Houchen did not move. Tan Wan only felt that when the wind-type spiritual power in her hands bombarded Long Houchen's body, it was immediately dissolved by a strange vibration. It could not penetrate his body at all. Long Houchen did not release any counterforce. He just stood there, his hands hanging by his side, and stared at her with a burning gaze. Lowering her hands, Tan Wan looked at Long Houchen in a daze. I lost. These 3 words came out of her mouth with difficulty, but she had to admit that she had lost. She could clearly feel that Long Houchen's cultivation was much, much higher than hers, not only in terms of spiritual power, but also in terms of combat experience, comprehension, and the use of skills. They were not on the same level. Long Houchen took 2 steps back, increasing the distance between him and Tan Wan. The magic you used just now was very strong. If I hadn't specially studied the frequency of vibrations in the air, it would have been very difficult to resist. Tan Wan smiled bitterly. You don't need to comfort me. A loss is a loss. This is the gap between me and you. However, I have 2 questions. First, how did you break my tornado array? Second, you seem to know that I know martial techniques. However, this secret is only known by Master. Even Lin Xian does not know. Could it be that Master told you? That is impossible. Chapter 197. Tan smiled bitterly. You don't have to comfort me. A loss is a loss. This is the gap between you and me. However, I have two questions. First, how did you break my tornado array? Second, you seem to know that I know martial arts. However, this secret was only known by Master. Even Lin Xian didn't know. Could it be that Master told you? That's impossible. Long Haochen smiled and said, I also used all my strength to break your tornado array. I once created a spell called Ripple of Light. It's a spell that studies the frequency of spiritual energy oscillations. So, when you first used the tornado formation, I could already feel the difference in each of them. I closed my eyes not to look down on you, but to focus on judging the changes in the tornado. If I don't handle it well, their power will really explode. In the end, I used different frequencies to find the flaws of your tornado and neutralize them one by one. This process consumed a lot of my spiritual energy. Tamlin was still puzzled, but I've never seen such sword intent in my life. Even the powerhouses in the warrior temple can't compare to you in terms of understanding the sword. If I'm not wrong, you've already entered the realm of being one with the sword. The sword intent was even more natural. It's definitely not something that you've comprehended for a day or two. Where did this attainment come from? Long Haochen smiled and said, this question is even easier to answer. Just like how you practice magic and martial arts at the same time, I'm not only a guardian knight, but also a punishment knight. My sword skills are naturally what I pay the most attention to. Tan Wan's eyes widened. Punishment and guardian dual knight? Moreover, you seem to have done a perfect fusion of the two knight skills. It seems that you Knights Templars are still ahead of us. Saying this, she couldn't help but feel a little dejected. Long Haochen said, let me continue to answer your other question. It's true that Temple Master Li Zhengji told me that you might practice both magic and martial arts. Not with words, but with actions. That day when Home Masterly transformed into the Wind God, I already had this feeling. Although he had cast a powerful, forbidden-level spell, if he didn't have sufficient understanding of martial techniques, he wouldn't have been able to achieve such a level of mastery. That's why I made a bold guess. In fact, magic and martial arts are one family. For us, Knight, haven't we always used magic to support martial arts to form the Knight skills? No matter what kind of ability it is, its source is spiritual power. Under such circumstances, it is not impossible for you mages to seek a breakthrough through martial arts. However, I suggest that you work hard to increase your external spiritual energy. Otherwise, relying solely on your internal spiritual energy to execute martial skills will have its limits. Unless you can one day reach Palace Master Li's cultivation level and transform into a forbidden spell to execute martial skills. Tan Wan snorted and said, it's easy for you to say. How can it be so easy? Dual cultivation of martial skills and magic was extremely difficult for anyone. A person's energy is limited, so of course we have to make choices. Long Haochen nodded and said, you'll have to consult Temple Master Li about this. I can't help you. Our competition is over, right? Tan Wan snorted in annoyance and said, you win. What? Are you still going to humiliate me? Long Haochen laughed and said, you really should change your temper. Otherwise, I'm afraid it will affect your future cultivation. It's very difficult to cultivate to the peak if your emotions are unstable. Tan Wan was stunned for a moment. It was unknown if she had heard Long Haochen's words. She changed the topic and said, didn't you say you have a request? Say it. You won, so I'll try my best to do it. Long Haochen said, Lin Xian and I will be leaving soon. But Sister Xian, and her monster hunter's companions will still stay in Jialing Pass. I hope you can help me take care of them. I've always treated Sister Xian as my own sister. Tan Wan frowned and said angrily, are you deliberately humiliating me? You must already know what happened between me and Lin Xian, right? You want me to take care of my love rival? Only you can think of that. Long Haochen said helplessly, I just hope to help you resolve this feud. Speaking of which, it's impossible to say who's right and who's wrong. Everything is the result of a freak combination of factors. Are you going to be like this forever? In the future, whether it's you or Lin Xian, you're bound to become the higher-ups of the Magic Temple. Aren't you afraid that the conflict between the two of you will lead to discord among the higher-ups of the Magic Temple in the future? I know it's hard for you to let go, and I don't know much about relationships. So, I can only advise you to treat it with a normal heart. Time is the best buffer. Perhaps, after a period of time, when you can find your true love, you'll naturally forgive Lin Xin. But there's one thing I must emphasize. No matter how strong you are in the Magic Temple, I don't want you to hurt Sister Xin. Otherwise, I won't let you go, and I won't even let the Magic Temple off. Are you threatening me? Tanwan said coldly. Long Haochin said indifferently. You can say that. I hope the next time we meet, we can be friends and not enemies. After saying this, he turned around and walked outside. Looking at his back, Tanwan suddenly had a very special feeling. In front of this man, she, who had always been known as the #1 genius of the Magic Temple, seemed so small. Seeing him put on the golden foundation armor again, she felt as if she could see the back of her teacher. But he doesn't seem to be older than me. The feeling of disappointment was not comfortable, but Tanwan was surprised to find that she didn't have the courage to refuse Long Haochin's words. She didn't dare to take the risk. But should she really take care of that woman like he said? Early morning, Long Haochin, Kai Han Yu, and Lin Xin quietly left the back door of Jialing Pass and headed south. At some point, Lin Xion's eyes were already filled with tears. Beside her were the members of their demon hunt squad. Lu Shi could even guess Long Haochin's arrival, and the emotions in his heart even surpassed Tanwan's. After all, he had witnessed the growth of the monster hunters with his own eyes. In just a few years, he couldn't even see their backs anymore. The gap between the two sides had reached a level that could only be described as a chasm. Not far away, Tanwan and Xianyuan Yin also stood there, watching Long Haochin and the others leave. Xianyuan Yin felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted off his shoulders. Even his somewhat gloomy eyebrows relaxed. He had always been deeply in love with Tanwan, but because of a letter from Lin Xin, Tanwan broke off their engagement. He had never hated Tanwan, but he hated Lin Xin to the core. Following Lin Xion's outstanding performance in the Magic Temple and his outstanding performance in the Holy War at Jialing Pass, the hatred in Xianyuan Yan's heart continued to deepen. He had even fought a few times with Lin Xian in private. He was very afraid that Tanwan would be snatched away by Lin Xian. Lin Xian finally left. Xianyuan Yin was surprised to find that the hatred in his heart seemed to have disappeared with his departure. Although Tanwan still hadn't acknowledged him, he had still lost his greatest competitor. Xianyuan Yin understood Tanwan better than anyone else. He was very clear on what he should do. Tanwan suddenly walked in front of Lin Xian and said in a low voice, "Don't cry." Lin Xian was slightly stunned. Looking at Tanwan, she couldn't help but frown. Lin Xian had left. What else did this woman want? Tanwan was silent for a while before saying, "You have a good brother. Let bygones be bygones. In my memory, there is no more Lin Xian, that bastard." After saying this, she immediately turned around and left. Lin Xian was stunned, while Xianyuan Yin was overjoyed. He knew that his chance had finally arrived. Perhaps it was also the arrival of spring. Heading south from Jialing Pass, the next place to reach was the Southeast Stronghold. The Warrior Temple's Southeast Stronghold and the Magic Temple's Jialing Pass had always been closely related. The two temples were relatively close and even helped each other. Therefore, although the Southeast Stronghold had a hard time defending, it still managed to resist the attack of the demons. After flying at full speed for 4 days, Long Haochin and the other 3 finally arrived at one of the 6 stronghold cities of the Temple League. They came at the right time. The demon army was launching a fierce attack on the Southeast Stronghold. The 8 demon gods outside the Southeast Stronghold didn't directly participate in the battle, but the light of the 8 demon god pillars covered the entire demon army. The fierce battle caused a faint scent of blood to be smelled high up in the sky. Looking down from the sky, they could clearly see the scene of blood flowing like a river. "What should we do, Commander? Let's join the battle," Han Yu said to Long Haochin. Long Haochin nodded and said, Wait a moment. Let me look for Yuan first. Even as the son of light, he also had his own selfish motives. At this time, in the distant sky, he and Han Yu released light elements to show their status as allies to the Southeast Stronghold. Helping the Southeast Stronghold defend against the demon army was necessary, but helping Wang Yuan was ranked higher. Closing his eyes, Long Haochen, who was riding on the back of the Star King, focused his spiritual power on the top of the Southeast Stronghold, looking for Wang Yuan's figure. Because of the fierce battle below, the spiritual power fluctuations were extremely violent, causing great interference to his spiritual power. Therefore, it was relatively difficult for Long Haochen to search for her. Wang Yuan was currently on the Southeast Stronghold. With the Divine Soul Shield in her left hand and Sanguine Storm in her right, she was already a bloody person. Even she couldn't tell how many colors of blood were on her body. The Holy War had been going on for almost 2 years, and both sides had expended a lot of energy. The demon army had originally quieted down a lot, only occasionally launching some symbolic attacks. The Southeast Stronghold also took the opportunity to rest and recuperate. But for some reason, a week ago, the demon army launched another all-out attack, and the attack was even more fierce than before. For a moment, the powerhouses of the warrior temple of the Southeast Stronghold were all involved in the war. The battle was in full swing, and the entire stronghold was covered in a thick layer of blood. Wang Yuan was still on the front line of the battlefield, guarding the top of the stronghold. Compared to the beginning of the Holy War, whether it was the Divine Soul Shield or Sanguine Storm, they were now covered in a thick layer of blood. It wasn't just a stain of blood, but also a powerful, ferocious aura, which was caused by countless killings. Wang Yuan's appearance didn't change much compared to before, but her temperament had undergone earth-shattering changes. Cold and calm. Even in the midst of a massacre, her whole body was filled with the smell of blood, and her expression wouldn't change in the slightest. Even some of the veteran powerhouses of the warrior temple couldn't compare to her in terms of ruthlessness. And Wang Yuan's cultivation could also be described as advancing at a tremendous pace. The continuous killings had accumulated a large amount of murderous aura, and no one knew what method she used, but under the circumstances that her divine soul bloodline was stimulated, she had broken through one after another. Now, her cultivation had actually surpassed Zhang Fangfang, who had broken through to the 7th Order several years earlier than her. This determination would cause any of the higher-ups of the warrior temple to be moved. 7th Order Level 5. This was Wang Yuan's current internal spiritual energy, coupled with the terrifying killing weapons in her hands. If one were to judge the god of death of the Southeast Fort, she would definitely be worthy of the title. From the start of the Holy War until now, she had not missed a single battle. At the most, she would continuously kill for 5 days and 5 nights, until she fainted from exhaustion. Only then would she be carried off the fort. And when she recovered, she would disregard everyone's attempts to stop her, and once again stand on the Southeast Fort. The current Wang Yuan had long become the heroine of the Southeast Fort, and was the idol of most of the soldiers. Zhang Fangfang no longer had his monster hunters, and he had always been by Wang Yuan's side quietly. With regards to Wang Yuan's fighting style, he had lost count of how many times he had tried to persuade her. Who knew how many times he had blocked the attacks of the enemies for Wang Yuan? However, Wang Yuan did not listen to him at all. Later on, Zhang Fangfang's mentality gradually changed. Not only did his feelings for Wang Yuan not weaken because of her determination, but it also became stronger. Moreover, he was also influenced by Wang Yuan. The Guardian Knight had almost turned into the Punishment Knight, and when he went berserk, he was not much weaker than Wang Yuan. At this moment, Zhang Fangfang stood beside Wang Yuan, and the armor on his body had long turned colorful. The heavy sword in his hand was slashing at the enemies, and the shield in his hand was used to block the attacks for Wang Yuan. Be it Wang Yuan or Zhang Fangfang, it could be said that they had climbed out from a pile of corpses. If it were not for the protection of the spiritual stove, coupled with the deliberate care of the higher-ups of the warrior temple, perhaps they would have died on the battlefield many times over. The three huge bear demons that were thrown to the top of the city wall by the catapult went straight for Zhang Fangfang and Wang Yuanyuan. They waved their powerful sledgehammers and met Wang Yuanyuan's attack head-on. Boom! The first bear demon's attack was blocked by Zhang Fangfang with his shield. The second bear demon's attack was blocked by his heavy sword. With a muffled groan, Zhang Fangfang spat out a mouthful of blood. He did not know how many times he had been injured, and even he himself was already a little used to it. Under the violent collision, the two bear demons were also forced to take a few steps back. And everything that Zhang Fangfang did was to buy time for Wang Yuanyuan. The divine giant's soul shield smashed away the two sledgehammers' bombardment without any suspense. The sanguine storm, just like its name, erupted in the next moment. On the top of the city wall, there was once again a reign of terror. Even with the ferocity of the bear demon, the other two bear demons could not help but reveal a look of fear when they saw their comrade being cut alive by the sanguine storm. They panicked and attacked to the side. They did not dare to face Wang Yuanyuan, the goddess of death again. With the divine giant's soul shield propped up, Wang Yuanyuan gasped for breath. Her almost blood-red eyes looked at Zhang Fangfang beside her, and she gently nodded to him. Zhang Fangfang forced a smile and said, "I'm fine. You rest for a while. I can hold on." Wang Yuanyuan did not say anything. Most of the time, friendship did not need to be said out loud, but remembered in the heart. At this moment, suddenly, a golden beam of light fell from the sky and enveloped Wang Yuanyuan. Immediately after, another golden beam of light fell, but this time it fell on Zhang Fangfang. A thick warmth mixed with the extremely comfortable light elements quickly nourished their bodies. In the midst of a pleasant sound, two golden angels descended from the sky. Their 6 wings flapped, and they gently embraced Zhang Fangfang and Wang Yuanyuan from behind. They had been fighting continuously on the southeast fortress for 3 days and 3 nights. Their physical fatigue, injuries, and spiritual power consumption had pushed them to the brink of collapse. At this time, these two powerful light healing spells were like charcoal in the snow. Whether it was physical strength or spiritual power, they were recovering at an alarming rate. What surprised Zhang Fangfang even more was that he saw that the golden light that fell on Wang Yuanyuan was so pure. Apart from the golden color, the archangel of light and shadow also faintly emitted a holy aura. The blood in Wang Yuanyuan's eyes also rapidly disappeared under the embrace. In other words, she was not only healing Wang Yuanyuan's injuries, but also soothing her murderous spirit, mental and physical healing. This was the first time Zhang Fangfang had seen such an archangel's embrace. Almost instinctively, Zhang Fangfang and Wang Yuanyuan looked up at the sky at the same time. In the sky, 4 figures rushed down. Among them, the 2 knights were the 2 casters of the archangel's embrace healing spells. As they floated to the ground, a large number of fireballs were scattered from the fire crystal staff in the hands of the magician in a fiery red robe. Whether it was in the air or on the ground, a large number of demons attacking on the city wall were swept away. The blue fireball caused the air to be filled with a thick charred smell. Of course, it was the bodies of the demons that were burnt. A few of the stronger demons, including the 2 bear demons that had escaped to the side, perished in a flash of gray light. In almost a breath's time, the section of the city wall where Zhang Fangfang and Wang Yuanyuan were was much quieter. Han Yu quickly stepped forward, holding the heavy shield in front of him. Lin Xian naturally dodged to his back, but the attack of the fire crystal staff in his hand did not stop at all, fully displaying the powerful attack power of the fire magician. In the face of his powerful magic attack, no demons could get close to him for the time being. Han Yu Lin Xian Kai, Wang Yuanyuan's hoarse voice was filled with disbelief. For the first time since the start of the Holy War, her hands holding the weapons trembled. Yuanyuan, me too. Long Haochen's voice came from behind the mask of the adamantine foundation armor. Clang! The weapons in Wang Yuanyuan's hands dropped at the same time. Her body swayed, and she almost fell. It was Zhang Fangfang who quickly held her up. Boss! You guys are finally here. In the southeast fortress, The incomparably strong and bloody goddess of war Wang Yuanyuan suddenly lost control of her emotions and burst into tears. Long Haochen stepped forward, ignoring the bloodstains on Wang Yuanyuan's body, and gave her a strong hug. "We are here, and we're going to meet up with Ing and Sima. The General Class Monster Hunt 64 will be reorganized." "No, when we reorganize, we will definitely be King Class." "Yes, yes." Wang Yuanyuan was completely speechless, and her tears couldn't stop flowing. Because of her lack of confidence, she could be said to have suffered the most in the General Class Monster Hunt 64 in the past 2 years of the Holy War. Almost every day, she struggled on the edge of life and death, and every day, she fought hard to find a breakthrough. She didn't want to be left behind by her companions, so that she could still be a part of the team on the day of reorganizing. Long Haochen came, and so did Kai, Han Yu, and Lin Xian. They didn't forget me, and they came to find me. Our monster hunters will finally be reorganized. At this moment, Wang Yuanyuan felt weak all over, and her tense nerves suddenly relaxed. She couldn't control her emotions no matter what. Long Haochen returned her to Zhang Fangfang's arms. "Thank you, Brother Zhang." Zhang Fangfang sighed softly. "Everything I did for Yuanyuan was for my own sake. I couldn't protect my companions, and if I can't even protect her, then I can only let her go." Long Haochen said, "Yuanyuan's emotions aren't stable, so I'll have to trouble Brother Zhang to watch over her. We'll talk after this battle is over." As he spoke, he turned around and walked toward the top of the city walls. He raised his right hand, and a ripple of light appeared in his grasp. With the tip of his foot, Long Haochen leaped to Han Yu's side. He observed the current situation. With Lin Xian and Kai as the main attackers and Han Yu as the main defenders, as long as the other side didn't send any powerhouses of the 8th level or higher, this defensive line wouldn't be broken. Long Haochen took half a step back to stand behind Han Yu and began to recite an incantation. Ever since he ended his closed-door training, Long Haochen had become more like a light magus, and his application of light magic was indeed more powerful than that of a magus. A chosen's strong affinity with the light element often allowed him to cast spells of a higher level. When he was learning skills in the Cave of Illusion, Long Haochen tried his best to learn the defensive and healing skills of the Guardian Knight. Relying on the powerful abilities of Chosen, he even entered the realm of the 9th level Divine Knight and studied for a period of time. This was also the origin of his light-type forbidden spells. As he recited the incantation, the golden color on Long Haochen's body began to become more and more intense, and a large amount of light element in the air began to resonate with him. However, at this moment, there was an obvious look of disappointment on his face. Just as he expected, the same incantation might not be able to display the same power. Luck could not always be on his side. What Long Haochen was chanting was the incantation for divine rain. Unfortunately, he didn't manage to attract all the light element this time, so he wasn't able to display the miracle. In the end, he only completed the divine rain spell. A shining golden pillar of light shot into the sky, illuminating a large part of the sky. Then, a fine golden rain of light fell from the sky. Although the divine rain spell was far from being comparable to the divine rain, it was still a level 8 healing spell, and it covered an area of nearly 1,000 square meters. Within the area, all the warriors and mages on the southeastern fortress received extremely effective healing. As for the demons who were attacking the fortress, under the coverage of the divine rain spell, their bodies emitted bursts of green smoke, and their offensive was greatly reduced. However, the divine rain spell was, after all, a divine rain spell. Whether it was the coverage, the healing effect, or the duration, it was far from comparable to the divine rain, which was almost at the level of a super forbidden spell. Therefore, the offensive of the demons was only slightly restrained. After the soldiers of the southeastern fortress got a brief respite and healing, the divine rain spell ended. The demon army continued to charge forward like a tide. Lin Xian took half a step back at this time. The continuous magic attacks consumed a lot of his spiritual power. Even with the enhancement of the fire dragon wings, he still needed time to recover his spiritual power. Without the powerful magic attacks, the demons immediately rushed to the top of the city wall again. At the front of the charge were a few lurkers of the Rook tribe. They couldn't get through the solid city wall, but they did not hesitate to launch a frenzied attack with their spikes. Hanyu dealt with these enemies calmly, but he was not greedy for credit. Holding the shield tightly with both hands, he spread his perception all around, perfectly protecting Long Houchin and Lin Xin behind him. Holy Light Shield, Shield Recoil, Divine Block, Shield Wall. Several major shield defense skills were cast by him at the acme of perfection. His feet did not move, but not a single demon within 20 meters could take a step forward. It was like a ray of light, a ray of gray light, the ray of death. Wherever she went, even the powerful body of the demonic bear couldn't block her in the slightest. The sharpness of the Grim Reaper scythe could only be described as terrifying. Coupled with her superb speed, she easily made up for the possible loopholes on both sides of Han Yu's defense. Long Houchin still did not participate in the attack. One after another, the Guardian Knight was released from his body. Faith Halo, Guardian's Grace, Forte Halo, Spirit Gathering Halo, and Divine Halo. The effect of each halo released from his body was far greater than that of an ordinary knight's, and the area it covered was extremely wide. He could even use a fixed-point method to throw his halo out to cover other positions on the city wall. With a series of light magic spells, almost one-third of the warriors on the city wall of the southeast fortress enjoyed the enhancement of the halo. Although the enhancement of the halo was not huge, the enhancement of light magic not only greatly boosted the morale of the warriors, but also improved the combat power and survivability of the warriors. Among them, the most obvious effect was the Holy Halo. It was also one of the most useful halos for the knight in the war against the demons. Within the range of the halo, all the attacks of the warriors would have an additional holy effect. The lethality of the demons was greatly increased. If the dark demons entered the range of the Holy Halo, their strength would be immediately weakened. That's right, compared to defense and enhancement, Long Houchin's attack was much stronger. But now, he wasn't fighting a one-on-one or one-on-many duel with the enemy. Instead, he was fighting a war. The role of the Guardian Knight on the battlefield was far beyond that of the Knight's Punishment Knight. With the ability of the Oracle, the effect of each of Long Houchin's skills was at least 30% higher than that of an ordinary knight's. These enhancement skills that did not consume a lot of energy were almost constantly used by him. In an instant, one-third of the southeast fortress was covered in a layer of golden brilliance. After recovering for a short while, Lin Xin once again threw himself into the battle. He was like a cannon, firing out attacks. Wherever the heart flame reached, the sea of blue flames greatly limited the demon's attacks. When he attacked with all his might, Hanyu and Kair would hold back a little and recover their spiritual power. The tacit understanding between them was already deep in their bones. Even though they had not seen each other for a long time, they were still so harmonious when they worked together again. This tacit understanding came from absolute trust, especially in the case of Long Houchin. With him as the soul of the team, the General Class Monster Hunt 64 had a strong motivation to be fearless. Clang! The sound of metal clashing came from the left side of Long Houchin. An excited voice shouted, "Kair, you just take care of the right side. Leave the left side to me." Long Houchin turned his head and looked. It was Wang Yuanyuan. The sound of metal clashing came from the Divine Soul Shield and Sanguine Storm. Yuanyuan, Long Houchin said in surprise. Bathed in the halo released by Long Houchin, Wang Yuanyuan's body was covered in a layer of golden light. "Boss, how can I not be here? Do you know? I've been looking forward to fighting with everyone for too long, too long." After being healed by Archangel's embrace, Wang Yuanyuan's strength had recovered a little. More importantly, her emotions had changed. The arrival of Long Houchin and the others had loosened the tension in her heart. At the same time, it also stimulated the endless fighting spirit in her heart. Being able to fight together with her most familiar companions was definitely a blessing for her at the moment. Seeing Long Houchin and the others working together, how could Wang Yuanyuan rest in peace? After recovering a little, she immediately went to Long Haochen's side. Long Haochen did not stop Wang Yuan. He knew that he could not stop her. Okay, let's fight side by side. Yuan, open your soul chain. Yes, leader, Wang Yuan replied in a loud voice. When they first separated, every member of the 64th Commander Grey Demon Hunt Squad consciously severed their soul chains, because they didn't know what they would encounter during this period of separation, and none of them wanted to implicate their comrades. After reuniting, the soul chain was reconnected. This meant that they were recombining as a whole. After recombining, the General Class Monster Hunt 64 was much stronger than before. The life and death experience made them cherish this team even more. At the same time, their experience and strength had increased by leaps and bounds. 5 of the 7 people had returned, and the team's strength had recovered a lot. With Wang Yuan guarding the left side, with her Divine Soul Shield and Sanguine Storm, and Long Haochen in the center, he could focus on casting buffs. The higher-ups of the Warrior Temple had already noticed the changes on this side. When the 4 people descended from the sky and joined the battlefield, they were shocked. However, they did not stop Long Haochen and Han Yu because of their light attribute. When they saw the golden foundation armor on Long Haochen, they could not help but be shocked. The knight on a golden pedestal was the backbone of the Knights Templars. Apart from carrying out missions, he would not easily leave the dragon-resisting pass. Why would a knight on a golden pedestal suddenly bring a few people to the southeast stronghold? The Warrior Temple Master, Qiu Yonghao, led the war gods and war emperors to confront the 8 demon gods. When he saw Long Haochen releasing buffs one after another, he could not help but admire him. This was the Guardian Knight, magic and combat dual cultivator. On the battlefield, the role of a Guardian Knight was simply too great. They could defend, support, attack, and even heal. A powerful and well-rounded Guardian Knight could hold up the sky. Qiu Yonghao and the powerhouses of the Warrior Temple were currently floating in the air. They could see everything clearly from above. Ever since Long Haochen and the others came, the pressure on the southeast stronghold was significantly reduced. The demons' attacks were also effectively suppressed. Just these few people were a great help to the war. As the leader of the Warrior Temple, Qiu Yonghao was the one who felt it the most. Knight, mage, assassin, knight, warrior. Wait a minute, Wang Yuan actually cooperated with them so well. Could it be that these people were from the same monster hunters as her? Thinking of this, Qiu Yonghao could not help but be shocked. In his mind, he immediately recalled the young man who slashed with his sword in the Warrior Temple and left behind the profound meaning of the sword in the Warrior Temple. Could it be that the knight on a golden pedestal who was constantly casting buffs was him? In less than 2 years, he actually grew to such an extent. Recalling the important meeting of the Temple League less than 2 years ago, Qiu Yonghao could not help but feel a little more complicated. What is the role of the Guardian Knight on the battlefield? It is not to defend, heal, or attack. It is to ensure that as many of your comrades as possible survive. Only by understanding this and doing this can you be a qualified Guardian Knight. His grandfather's words echoed in Long Haochen's mind. He became more and more adept at releasing the auras, and the coordination of the auras became better. The recovery of the Adamant Foundation battle armor, his own recovery, and spiritual power were almost endless for him to cast these aura-type magic spells that were not even at the 5th grade. In terms of spellcasting speed, although he could not compare to the pure mage Lin Xian, in terms of spellcasting distance and the effects of spells of the same level, Lin Xian was far inferior. Chapter 198. Long Haochen had already entered a special state. It was a feeling of spiritual sublimation. It was as if every time he released a halo, the lives of his companions would be saved. The feeling was much stronger than when he took the initiative to kill the enemies. The war continued. The Holy War was a protracted war to begin with, and it was even more so now. The war was like a meat grinder, with corpses piling up like mountains. The addition of Long Haochen and the rest had indeed stabilized the situation at the southeast fortress, but the demons' attack did not seem to be weakening. Instead, it became more intense. More powerful demons joined the battlefield, charging at the southeast fortress defense line. Circles of black light patterns were constantly released from the 8 demon god pillars. Each light pattern would cover a large area of the demons. Under the influence of these light patterns, the demons would immediately become extremely excited and fearlessly charge toward the southeast fortress. Among the 8 demon gods responsible for attacking the southeast fortress, the leader of the demons was extremely beautiful. Even though she was a human, she had the appearance of a beautiful woman. However, she had the body of a man. She was burly and had 6 black wings on her back. There was also a triangular black crystal on her forehead. Paimon was ranked 9th among the 72 demon gods. He was an angel demon god and specialized in all kinds of black magic. Other than Paimon, the other 7 demon gods were ranked less than 20. Therefore, he was naturally the commander here. The angel demon god Paimon was different from the demon god of hell, Marbus. Marbus was a pure dark sorcerer, or rather, a hell sorcerer. On the other hand, Paimon was a dual cultivator of magic and martial arts. He specialized in all kinds of black magic to enhance his body. To be able to be ranked in the top 10 of the 72 demon gods without belonging to a race, he was not much weaker than Marbus in terms of individual combat strength. At the same time, he was also a good friend of the moon demon, Agar's. He had a very high status among the demons. When Paimon was young and had yet to inherit the position of the demon god, he had once served as a guard for the demon emperor and received a lot of care and guidance from the demon emperor. Therefore, he was extremely loyal to the demon emperor. He would resolutely carry out all the orders of the demon emperor. If the demon emperor asked him to only exhaust the strength of the warrior temple, he would do so. If the demon emperor asked him to strengthen his attacks, he would do so. He was just an individual and did not have his own race. Naturally, he did not need to consider anything for his race. He only needed to follow the orders of the demon emperor. Therefore, he was also known as the most capable subordinate of the demon emperor. Of course, Paimon's status couldn't be compared to Agar's and Vashik. In the demon god emperor's heart, those two were his best brothers. But even so, among the demons besides the demon god emperor, the moon demon god, and the star demon god, Paimon didn't recognize anyone else. The scary thing about an individual was that he had no worries. Therefore, even the undead demon god Samina and the hell demon god Marbus had to give him some leeway. However, there was an exception. This exception was the berserk demon god Anan. Although Paimon wouldn't listen to Anan's orders, he was absolutely convinced by Anan. He was beaten into submission. Although they were both individual fiend celestials, he had never won a single spar with Anan. Every time, he was beaten to a pulp. Lord Paimon, that knight who suddenly appeared, is a bit of a threat. Did you do something to him? Beside Paimon, an extremely handsome fiend celestial with 6 black wings spoke in a low voice. Apart from the fact that he had the body of a man, he was very similar to the demon god Paimon. However, he had a third eye on his forehead that was closed. The demons were ranked 49th among the 72 demon god pillars. The demon god of insight, Crosser, had a good relationship with Paimon because he looked very similar to him. He was also an individual demon god and could be considered a direct descendant of Paimon. Paimon said, "Check it out." Yes. Crosser agreed and looked in Long Houchen's direction. The demon god pillar that belonged to him rippled with a layer of gloomy dark blue. Soon after, his single eye slowly opened, revealing a dark blue pupil. The strange, colorless ripples were like a straight line as they headed straight for the southeastern stronghold. Long Houchen, who was constantly casting halos on the walls of the stronghold, suddenly felt dizzy, as if something was about to be extracted from his mind by a special force. Alarmed, he immediately stopped casting magic. At the same time, he focused his spiritual energy to sense the sudden change. In Long Houchen's perception, the power that made him dizzy was a powerful spiritual fluctuation, but it didn't seem like an offensive spiritual magic. In terms of spiritual force, even he couldn't compare to the other party. However, this spiritual force didn't have the strong impact of spiritual magic. Thus, although his perception was strong, he couldn't determine what this spiritual force was. He could only vaguely sense that it came from the demons. A faint layer of gold rippled in Long Hao-Chen's eyes. Soon after, this layer of gold began to expand from his eyes and quickly enveloped his body. Outside this layer of golden light, one could vaguely see fine dark blue light patterns. In the blink of an eye, the light patterns died, and everything seemed to return to normal. The demon god of insight, Crosser, revealed a look of surprise. What a powerful spiritual force. That knight is clearly of the light attribute. How can a spiritual force be so powerful? The angel demon god, Paimon, frowned. What's going on? Crosser said, this human knight's spiritual force is very strong. My insight was discovered as soon as it landed on him. His spiritual force automatically produced a repulsive effect, and he only detected a portion of the situation. His cultivation should be around rank 8, and the fine gold foundation armor on his body is at the epic stage. He is 92 meters tall and weighs about 80 kilograms. His external spiritual force is about 30,000. Compared to ordinary humans, his body is much stronger. Age? Speaking of age, Crosser's eyes revealed a hint of confusion. His reaction is too fast. Perhaps my detection is not too accurate. The insight spell tells me that he should be less than 30 years old. I don't know exactly how old he is. I can't detect his other equipment either. A rank 8 knight who's less than 30 years old? It seems that your detection isn't accurate after all. Are you sure you can use your exclusive ability? Crosser shook his head and said, it's very difficult. Although his cultivation is much lower than mine, his spiritual force is very strong. I don't have absolute confidence in succeeding. With his spiritual force, even if I succeed, I'm afraid I'll be severely injured. At this moment, Paimon had already seen Long Hao-Chen sprinkle halo skills on the southeastern fortress, assisting the warriors of the southeastern fortress to resist the attack of the demon army. Give it a try. I'll help you amplify it. There are very few humans who can wear the epic fine gold foundation armor, second only to the Knight of the Seal among the Knights Templars. This knight is even more annoying than the Tier 9 warriors of the Warrior Temple. Moreover, since he just arrived, he shouldn't know you're here. The Warrior Temple didn't have time to remind him. Yes, Crosser didn't hesitate when he heard Paimon's words. One of the most important reasons why he was able to obtain the appreciation of Paimon, the 9th demon god, was that he was obedient. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he was Paimon's thug. Closing his eyes, Crosser began to chant an incantation. His voice became very low, and the demon god pillar not far behind him turned completely dark blue under his incantation. At the same time, Paimon's figure flashed, and he blocked Crosser behind him, blocking the human's line of sight. At the same time, he raised his hands, and a layer of black mist spread out from his body, covering all 8 demon god pillars behind him. The overwhelming dark aura gathered in the thick mist, and a melodious sound rang out. Immediately afterward, angels flapping their black wings began to soar around the black mist. Black rays of light shot towards the demon army below. This was Paimon's fallen angel domain. Any demons below Tier 7 that were illuminated by this domain would instantly increase their strength by 1 tier for 5 minutes. In terms of amplification effect, the fallen angel domain was definitely ranked in the top 3 among the demons' domains. At the same time, Paimon, who was hiding in the black mist, began to chant an incantation softly. Dark golden light surged in his eyes, turning into a dark golden vortex that enveloped Crosser behind him. With the enhancement of the dark golden light, Crosser's chanting speed increased significantly. The dark blue light released by the demon god pillar, hidden in the black mist, began to distort. The distorted ripples gathered at the center of his brows, and his only open eye began to become more and more demonic and deep. Although a knight on a golden pedestal would attract Paimon's attention, he generally wouldn't let Crosser take such a risk. He didn't know why, but after hearing Crosser's introduction of Long Hao-Chen, he didn't hesitate to let him take action. Deep in his heart, he vaguely felt that there was something wrong with this adamantine knight. Only by killing him could he resolve the problem. Paimon had always been decisive. Regardless of whether his feeling was right or not, killing a knight on a golden pedestal of Knights Templars was never wrong. Due to the small gap that had appeared before, Long Houchen became slightly vigilant. However, that mental fluctuation was only a flash in the pan, and it didn't cause any substantial damage to him, so he didn't pay too much attention to it and continued to cast the Halo skill. With Long Houchen's current cultivation base, he firmly believed that unless the top 3 demon gods of demons came here, even if the other party suddenly launched a forbidden spell-level attack, it wouldn't be able to do anything to him given the distance between him and the 8 demon gods outside. The previous battles in the Dragon-Resisting Pass, Exorcist Pass, and Jialing Pass had deeply proven this point. Qiu Yonghao, the master of the Warrior Temple, had been paying attention to Long Houchen's side. Just now, when Long Houchen cast the halo and stopped for a moment, he couldn't help but be slightly taken aback. Long Houchen's previous halos were like moving clouds and flowing water, and there was no sign of spiritual power exhaustion. This sudden stop was very abrupt. What's wrong with him? Qiu Yonghao immediately had doubts in his heart. From his position, he naturally couldn't see the blue-black color that Long Houchen saw before. Immediately afterward, Qiu Yonghao saw the black fog surging above the demon army opposite, and the angel demon god Paimon launched the fallen angel domain. An ominous premonition appeared in Qiu Yonghao's heart almost instantly, and he immediately felt that something was going to happen. What are the demons going to do? Qiu Yonghao's body suddenly trembled as he thought of the weakest but most dangerous guy among the 8 demon gods of demons. Fine Gold Knight, be careful. Grab the companion next to you. Qiu Yonghao's shout resounded through the sky almost at the next moment. With his cultivation base, he could naturally transmit his voice to Long Houchen easily. At the same time, Qiu Yonghao had already rushed out of the southeast fortress with a group of powerhouses from the Warrior Temple. The Fine Gold Knight was undoubtedly calling Long Houchen. He, who was casting the halo, naturally remembered Qiu Yonghao's voice. However, Qiu Yonghao's words puzzled him a little. Grab the companion next to me? What does he mean? It was in that moment of hesitation that Long Houchen suddenly felt an indescribable huge threat suddenly befalling him. Even with his mentality, he immediately panicked because this threat was full of unpredictability. All powerhouses had a strong desire for control, especially when it came to themselves. They were used to controlling everything within the scope of their ability. Once there was an uncontrollable situation, they would immediately panic. That was the case for Long Houchen at this moment. A straight dark blue light connected the thick black fog of the demons with the top of the southeast fortress almost without warning. The fulcrum of this light on the top of the southeast fortress was Long Houchen. In that instant, Long Houchen felt his body suddenly stiffen, and a terrifying mental strength that was so powerful that he suffocated was imprisoning him instantly. At this moment, he had just raised his hand and was about to grab Hanyu, who was in front of him. Strangely enough, the dark blue light had no effect on anyone else. Even when it passed through Hanyu's body, he didn't feel anything at all. All it did was wrap around Long Houchen. Kai'er, Wang Yuanyuan, Hanyu, and Zhang Fangfang immediately realized that something was wrong. They hurriedly attacked the dark blue light, but to their horror, they realized that everything they did was in vain. When the dark blue light appeared, it seemed to be pure light without any spiritual energy waves, and all their attacks landed on empty air. Meanwhile, Long Houchen's body remained stiff. In the next moment, his figure began to fade. Yes, Long Houchen reacted too slowly. If he had grabbed Hanyu the moment he heard Qiu Yonghao's voice, he would still have made it in time. Unfortunately, his thinking made him lose that opportunity. However, as a favored god, how could he just wait for death to come? Although Long Houchen didn't know what the dark blue light would bring him, he could sense the danger within it. Once the dark blue light succeeded, he would definitely be in grave danger. At this critical moment, Long Houchen immediately tried to activate all the abilities he could use, and the first thing he thought of was the Sun Moon Divine Snail Shield. However, he was shocked to find that other than his mental strength, All his spiritual energy had been sealed by the strange dark blue light, and he couldn't move an inch. Without the support of spiritual energy, no matter how powerful his equipment was, he couldn't unleash its true power. Mental strength, mental strength. The dark blue light was about to succeed. Long Houchen could almost see the sinister faces of those who were waiting for him. That's right. Without spiritual energy, he couldn't activate his equipment, but not all equipment required spiritual energy. A ball of golden light suddenly shone from Long Houchen's chest without any warning. If one looked closely, one could see that the golden light was in the shape of a small skull. In this life and death crisis, Long Houchen thought of the eternal melody, which had saved his and his companions' lives countless times. No matter how powerful the enemy's ability was, as long as he was teleported to the Tower of Eternity, what could they do? The eternal melody only needed mental strength to activate, and didn't need any spiritual energy support. Ever since the eternal melody was bound to Long Houchen, the Tower of Eternity had been absorbing spiritual energy from the outside world through it. Especially after Long Houchen joined the Holy War, the eternal melody became greedier, and the Tower of Eternity gave Long Houchen the feeling that it was a monster that was gradually awakening. The undead demon god Samakina became the Tower of Eternity's biggest sacrifice, and if it wasn't for his decisiveness, he would have been sucked dry by the Tower of Eternity. The absorption of the undead domain also greatly restored the radiance of the Tower of Eternity. Since then, Long Houchen had been on the battlefield many times, and each time, the souls of those who died on the battlefield would be greatly absorbed by the eternal melody, and the spiritual energy would be injected into the Tower of Eternity. Long Houchen had observed the eternal melody on his chest several times, and he found that the eye sockets of the golden skull were gradually showing signs of golden flames jumping. It was as if the eternal melody was coming to life, and his relationship with the Tower of Eternity had also become closer. As the absorption of spiritual energy increased, the original scorching heat had gradually disappeared when the eternal melody absorbed spiritual energy from the outside world and was replaced by warmth. The influence on Long Houchen was also getting smaller and smaller. The heavy feeling of the Tower of Eternity also made Long Houchen feel that he always had a huge support. However, he had never intended to directly use this support and did not know how to use it. In his perception, he was more like the spokesperson of the Tower of Eternity, and the Tower of Eternity was like his employer, constantly absorbing spiritual energy from the outside world through him, but did not want to do anything for him, so he could not control the power of the Tower of Eternity at all. Of course, Long Houchen had never tried to control the Tower of Eternity. It would only be used when he needed to teleport. If it was as he guessed, the Tower of Eternity already had the wisdom of its artifact, then it might not even be controlled by the holy law of necromancy, the sleeping calamity Electrolux. It would be even more difficult for Long Houchen to get rid of it. Fortunately, no matter how it used Long Houchen, perhaps because the residual consciousness of Electrolux had recognized Long Houchen as his inheritor, the Tower of Eternity had never shown any signs of harm to Long Houchen. It was a little strange that Long Houchen did not reject the Tower of Eternity as much as the sleeping calamity Electrolux, the artifact that was full of greed for souls. In any case, the Tower of Eternity not only helped them improve their strength, but also saved the lives of him and his companions many times. Without the Tower of Eternity, Long Houchen and the others would have died in the hands of the demons. They would not have the achievements they had now. At least their strength would not have improved so quickly. Sure enough, as Long Houchen expected, in a situation where other weapons and equipment could not be activated, and even Yiting could not be summoned, the eternal melody shone, as usual. Long Houchen's body that was covered in dark blue light had become illusory, as if it would disappear at any time. When the golden light appeared, a strange scene appeared. The golden light emitted from Long Houchen's chest almost instantly merged with the surrounding dark blue light, and the powerful spiritual fluctuations suddenly became chaotic. In shock, Long Houchen saw that the golden light emitted from the eternal melody not only merged with the dark blue light around his body, but also extended along the dark blue light beam towards the black mist of the demons in the distance. Almost in an instant, the dark blue light that connected the black mist to the southeastern fortress became dark blue and gold intertwined. In the air, Qiu Yonghao, the head of the warrior temple, wielded a huge beam of golden light, which brought a long, towering sword will as it slashed towards the black fog in the distance. At that moment, Long Houchen disappeared with a swoosh. The dark blue and gold intertwined light beam disappeared too. At the same time, the demon god of insight, the creator of the dark blue light beam in the distant black mist, also disappeared at the same time. The golden and blue lights that were entangled in the air disappeared almost at the same time. From the appearance of the dark blue light to the disappearance of all the other lights, only 2 breaths of time had passed. In such a short period of time, very few people knew what happened. The moment Long Houchen disappeared, Kai Anyu, Wang Yuan, and Lin Xian immediately calmed down. They were very familiar with Long Houchen, and the teleportation wave of spiritual power produced at the moment of his disappearance told them that Long Houchen had returned to the Tower of Eternity. Moreover, they had the soul chain necklace between them and Long Houchen, and the moment he teleported away, Kerr and the others did not feel any associated attack. In other words, Long Houchen was not in danger, at least for now. The Tower of Eternity was their secret, and, at the same time, it was the safest place for them. After sensing that Long Houchen had left through the Tower of Eternity, they immediately felt relieved. Perhaps he would teleport back in a while. Unfortunately, they didn't see that in the thick black fog opposite them, Paimon, the demon god of insight, also had a look of astonishment on his face. The demon god of insight, who was casting his innate skill, disappeared with the cavalier just like that. Long Houchen heaved a sigh of relief when the teleportation effect of the Tower of Eternity appeared. But he soon discovered that the dark blue light attached to him did not disappear, and it was still entangled with the golden light emitted by the Tower of Eternity. A tall figure vaguely appeared in front of him. The teleportation process was short. With a flash of light, Long Houchen had already entered the first floor of the Tower of Eternity. Not far in front of him was the demon god of insight, Crosser. Crosser's shock was much greater than Long Houchen's. The moment the teleportation appeared, his talent skill had completely escaped his control. Immediately after, he entered the process of teleportation that even his cultivation base could not resist. At this moment, as soon as the teleportation ended, he could not help but spit out a mouthful of dark blue blood. Originally, with the help of angel demon god Paimon, he would not have suffered a huge loss of vitality. However, during the teleportation process just now, his talent skill was still maintained, and it was impossible to interrupt it. The continuous effect, coupled with the effect of teleportation, immediately injured his origin. The more powerful the skill, the stronger the backlash, just like the spiritual stove. Crosser's cultivation base was actually not enough for him to rank in the 40s, and there were at least 5 or 6 demon gods behind him who were stronger than him. The reason why he could rank 49th was because of his talent skill. Crosser was known as the demon god of insight and could see the true situation of the enemy from a very long distance. In terms of magic, he belonged to the spiritual category. At the same time, like most demon gods, he also practiced magic and martial arts. Any illusion magic was useless in front of him. His talent skill was not strong for him, but if it was combined with other demon gods, it would be different. This talent skill of his was called the Spirit Attraction spell, and within a certain range, he could use his origin mental power to instantly lock onto the opponent and produce a powerful teleportation effect. He could teleport the opponent in front of him in an instant. In a sense, the Insight Soul leading technique and Long Houchen's Saint Spiritual Stove had the same wonderful effect, but it was much more powerful than the latter. After all, the Saint Spiritual Stove was just a pull, while the Spirit Attraction spell was a direct teleportation. Imagine, if Crosser's teleportation had been successful, then what Long Houchen would have faced would have been a siege of 8 demon gods formed in an instant. No matter how good his talent was, even if he could exert all his strength and time, and with the protection of a divine artifact, he would still die without a doubt. That was a siege of 8 demon gods. There wouldn't even be a chance to treasure it. Of course, it was precisely because of the power of the spirit attraction spell that it had a lot of restrictions. Crosser could only use the spirit attraction spell once a day. If he used it purely with the help of the demon god pillars, whether he succeeded or failed, he would have a very long period of mental weakness. Only if other demon gods were willing to use their origin mental power to help him could he reduce the backlash. At the same time, the spirit attraction spell could not be used on opponents with stronger cultivation or mental power than him. As long as the opponent's spiritual power or mental power surpassed his, the success rate of the spirit attraction spell would be greatly reduced. Another restriction was Qiu Yonghao's warning to Long Houchen. The spirit attraction spell could only be used on one person. If Long Houchen could pull another person at that time, then the spirit attraction spell would immediately be ineffective. This was also why the angel demon god Paimon had to activate his angel domain to help Crosser cover up the phenomenon when he used his skill. This spirit attraction spell had already caused the warrior temple to suffer several times. For Tier 8 warlords had died in the hands of the demon god like this. Therefore, Qiu Yonghao was very strict with this move. The experts of the warrior temple were usually at least in pairs, not giving Crosser a chance to make a move. But Long Houchen was different. He had just arrived and did not know the ability of the demon god Crosser. Only then did he fall for it. However, how could he not wet his shoes when he often walked by the river? Crosser had walked too much at night, and this time, he was finally unlucky enough to meet Long Houchen. Long Houchen's innate mental power was different from that of ordinary people, much stronger than that of experts of the same level. However, Crosser was a rank 9 demon god after all, and his magic attribute was mental. Therefore, Long Houchen's mental power was still inferior to his. Unless his cultivation could break through to rank 9, his mental power could not compare to the demon god insight. However, the strength of his mental power gave Long Houchen ample time to react. The stronger his mental power, the longer the teleportation process of the spirit attraction spell would take. Long Houchen successfully activated the Tower of Eternity with a few seconds of buffer. The Tower of Eternity's teleportation had a clear priority over the spirit attraction spell. As a supreme artifact, how could the demon god insight compare to the Tower of Eternity? Moreover, Long Houchen was now the spokesperson of the Tower of Eternity. The Tower of Eternity was counting on him to bring more souls. When he was in danger, this supreme artifact would naturally help him. However, the spirit attraction spell was activated with the demon god pillar as its source, and there were many strange things about it. Therefore, there was a mutation in the end. The angel of insight, Crosser, had indeed teleported Long Houchen to him, and Long Houchen had used the Tower of Eternity to teleport both of them here. Both teleportations were established, but Long Houchen had also escaped the crisis. What is this place? How did you escape? Crosser's heart was filled with doubts and shock as he looked at Long Houchen and could not help but ask. At the same time, he separated his hands, and a saber appeared in each of his palms. Black flames ignited on the saber, and at the same time, a layer of distorted fluctuations appeared around Crosser's body. He was filled with fear of an opponent who could destroy his spirit attraction spell. Long Houchen was also shocked when he discovered that he and Crosser had been teleported to the Tower of Eternity. As Crosser asked this question, he quickly moved back. An orange light flashed as the sun-moon divine snail shield was placed horizontally in front of his chest. Unlike Crosser's confusion, Long Houchen had already vaguely guessed the truth from the situation in front of him and the process just now. "I'm not escaping, but counterattacking," Long Houchen replied coldly. From the powerful aura emitted by the other party, it was obvious that he was a demon god. He seemed to have been beside the demon god who was leading the other party. At this moment, Long Houchen had the time to size up Crosser. It had to be said that this demon god was very handsome, and with the 6 black wings on his back, he looked even more heroic. Crosser had already calmed down, and he was in no hurry to attack Longhouchen. Is this another space? Since you have the ability to teleport me here, you naturally have the ability to teleport me back. Take me back, and I'll spare your life. Stalling for time was beneficial to him. Crosser was fearful of the place in front of him, but he was a spirit attribute demon god after all, and he had some experience in spatial positioning. He knew that Longhouchen must have something like a spatial key on him to teleport across space. As long as he obtained the spatial key, he would naturally be able to return to the holy demon continent. But to him, what was more important was the injury to his spiritual origin. He couldn't see through Longhouchen's strength, especially after seeing the Sun-Moon Divine Snail Shield. With his current injuries, he wasn't confident that he could escape unscathed after killing Longhouchen. Therefore, he used words to stall for time and give himself time to recover. After all, the other party was only Tier 8. He was confident that he could kill Longhouchen after recovering a portion of his spiritual origin. Snake demon god Andamari, who was ranked last, was as cunning as a fox, let alone Crosser, who was ranked 49th. Although he didn't have a domain yet, his cultivation base was that of a Tier 9 powerhouse. Spare my life? Unfortunately, I've never thought of sparing you, Longhouchen mocked. Crosser was plotting against him, but wasn't he plotting against Crosser as well? At this moment, Longhouchen had already unleashed his senses and was trying his best to determine Crosser's cultivation. It was true that the other party was a Tier 9 powerhouse, but the strength of a Tier 9 powerhouse was very clear. The mouthful of dark blue blood that Crosser had spat out earlier was definitely not fake. He was clearly injured. However, Longhouchen didn't know the severity of his injuries. The Tower of Eternity could be said to be Longhouchen's home ground. Longhouchen was judging the difference in strength between the two sides, so he wouldn't act hastily. Facing Crosser, there was no doubt that Longhouchen was at a disadvantage in terms of cultivation base, but he also had his own advantages. Firstly, in the Tower of Eternity, Longhouchen was absolutely confident that Crosser wouldn't be able to contact the demon god pillar that belonged to him. And a demon god who had lost the demon god pillar was just an ordinary Tier 9 powerhouse. Secondly, he was injured. No matter how injured he was, at least he wasn't completely unscathed. Moreover, judging from his powerful spiritual power, his injuries should also be related to his spiritual power. Longhouchen had never been afraid of mental attribute experts. Even the 12th-ranked demon God Cedi's forbidden spell had been reflected by him. Against a Tier 9, perhaps he could really make this demon god in front of him stay here forever. At the thought of this, Longhouchen's heart couldn't help but speed up. Fight a demon god alone? Win the battle? Even though he and Kair had just worked together to kill Cyan Demon Mount Devil Shi'er, be it Shi'er or Andamari, they were all Tier 8 demon gods. Although they could temporarily raise their cultivation to Tier 9 through the demon god pillar, there was still a gap between them and a true Tier 9. Can I win? Longhouchen wasn't sure, but he had already made up his mind to give it a try no matter what. Chapter 199. Hearing Longhouchen's words, Crosser raised his eyebrows and smiled. A mere rank 8 knight is trying to challenge the dignity of a rank 9? I know what you're thinking. I don't have the help of the demon god pillar here, right? But even without the demon god pillar, how can you be my match? Submit or die. You only have one choice. As he spoke, Crosser suddenly raised the long saber in his right hand, and a pitch-black blade of light shot straight at Longhouchen. The speed of the blade of light wasn't very fast, but the moment it slashed out, Longhouchen felt that he had been completely locked on by Crosser. No matter which direction he dodged in, it was impossible for him to dodge this attack. Crosser's eyes had already turned dark blue. The demon god of insight wasn't just for show. During the battle, his insight could also play a crucial role. He could even predict the enemy's first move and judge the enemy's next move. Under such circumstances, his attack would definitely be able to produce the greatest effect. None of the 72 demon god pillars of demons were simple. Be it strength or intelligence, they were all the same. Crosser's attack was both a deterrent and a test. He couldn't figure out how high Longhouchen's cultivation base could reach. Long Haochin took half a step back, and his body suddenly froze. At the same time, he made a move like a longbow being pulled, holding the sun-moon divine snail shield with both hands. Clang! A crisp, buzzing sound echoed violently on the first floor of the Tower of Eternity. Long Haochin's feet slid back against the ground until he hit the edge of the Tower of Eternity before stopping. The sun-moon divine snail shield shone with a strong orange-red halo. Long Haochin's body also flashed with golden light, and the different colors of light caused the surrounding space to tremble. After suffering this blow, Long Haochin's face was filled with shock. That's right, he could feel that Crosser's internal spiritual energy was in the hundreds of thousands. It was impossible for it to reach the level of Tier 2 Rank 9. However, even with such a cultivation base, he was completely unable to block the saber strike with his divine defense. Previously, the golden light on his body contained the light of light's vengeance, but at the same time, there was also the golden light produced by the life-sharing soul chain. In other words, Long Haochin was injured. Although it wasn't serious, he still suffered a slight shock under the defense of the sun-moon divine snail shield, and after his companions shared the burden. This showed how powerful Crosser was. A mere firefly dares to boast to me? Crossell was unforgiving. After his attack succeeded, he slashed at Long Haochin with his other saber. The pitch-black radiance was like a bolt of cold lightning as it charged at Long Haochin. His saber wasn't ordinary, and it used an ability similar to that of the Ling Gang. This was the judgment Long Haochin made immediately after receiving the first blow. What he didn't know was that among the demons, although a single demon god was far inferior to those demon gods with a race, the demon god emperor, in order to encourage these demon gods, would often bestow some powerful equipment to them. Therefore, a single demon god's combat strength was relatively strong. Although Insight Demon God Crosser's strength was ranked relatively low among the single demon gods, if it wasn't for his overall strength reaching 49th, he wouldn't have been ranked in this position. A true Stage 9 ranker, coupled with the Insight technique, if he could cultivate a domain, he might be able to enter the top 36. In the test, Long Haochin suffered as soon as he came up. However, as a god-blessed, he naturally couldn't continue to suffer losses forever. Seeing that the opponent's second attack was about to arrive, Long Haochin's body strangely disappeared. Without any warning, he strangely disappeared. Boom! Crosser's attack landed directly on the Tower of Eternity, causing a series of buzzing sounds. He couldn't help but be stunned. Even with his insight, he couldn't see how Long Haochin left. Of course, Long Haochin couldn't really teleport back to the Holy Demon Continent. Teleportation through the Tower of Eternity required time to buffer. Moreover, he couldn't leave Crosser here alone. Otherwise, once Crosser went to explore the mysteries of the Tower of Eternity and obtain something, it would really be too big to escape. There was a flash of light, and in the next instant, Long Haochin had already reappeared at his previous position. At the same time, there's also a bright moon that was like a small mountain. There were 5 bright moons. In addition to the Tower of Eternity's teleportation, Long Haochin also had the blood contract teleportation from Hao Yue. Fighting Crosser in the Tower of Eternity, Long Haochin's greatest advantage was that he could completely reveal all of his abilities without any scruples. Even if he couldn't kill Crosser, Crosser couldn't kill the Tower of Eternity either. Roar! Hao Yue's 5 heads let out a heaven-shaking roar at the same time, and a thick purple aura burst out from Hao Yue's body and shrouded Crosser. Suddenly, the previously arrogant demon god of insight retreated in a panic, as if he had encountered a ghost. His face was already aghast. Why you're... For a moment, he couldn't even say a whole sentence. Of course, Long Haochin knew that the other party had already recognized him. He withdrew the Sun-Moon Divine Snail Shield and pointed his right hand in front of him. Suddenly, a golden light separated from his body. Yu Ting appeared in front of Long Haochin, holding 2 heavy swords in her arms. Master, Yu Ting bowed slightly and handed the 2 heavy swords to Long Haochin. Long Haochin received the aria of the Goddess of Light, Blue Rain, and Hibiscus of Light. Immediately, his temperament underwent an earth-shattering change. Sharp sword intent burst forth from his body without the slightest bit of restraint, and his aura was more than twice as strong as before. "You're that human. You're that human." Crosser retreated more than 10 meters before he could stand still. He stared at Hao Yue, and fear from the depths of his bloodline spread throughout his body. For a moment, his brain could no longer remain as calm as before. The demon gods of demons had been passed down for many generations, but not all of their memories had been passed down. The more powerful the demon god, the more perfect the inheritance of their ancestors' memories. Hence, Demon Emperor could directly call out Hao Yue's other name, but Crosser, who was ranked 49th, could not. However, the instinct from his bloodline was still there. Although he could not call out who Hao Yue was, he could deeply sense the terrifying threat that Hao Yue posed to him. And because of this feeling, he felt fear from the bottom of his heart. The last time Long Haochen killed the Green Demon Horseman, he had teleported to the space where Hao Yue was and immediately armored Hao Yue and fused with his adamantine foundation battle armor. But at that time, he did not have the time to see the changes in Hao Yue clearly. He only felt that Hao Yue had become stronger. At this moment, Hao Yue was already more than 15 meters long. His aura had become thicker, and a unique dignity was vaguely being released from his body. In Long Haochen's perception, Hao Yue's cultivation was not yet at rank 8, and he was inferior to him around the peak of rank 7. However, with his peak rank 7 aura, he could actually make Demon God Crosser, a rank 9 powerhouse, feel fear. Why was that? Long Haochen had tried to ask Hao Yue in the past, but Hao Yue had always avoided it. Sometimes, he would even show obvious confusion, as if even he could not remember anything. Moreover, he only had one head when he followed Long Haochen, and he had evolved a second head with the help of Long Haochen's blood. What could such a young Hao Yue know? In Long Haochen's guess, the ones who could truly pose a threat to the demons were most likely Hao Yue's ancestors, including those in Hao Yue's space. In other words, the Hao Yue race was very powerful and would definitely have stronger growth in the future. That was Long Haochen's judgment. Therefore, it was normal for Hao Yue not to know what was going on. Hao Yue's 5 heads were light, fire, wind, water, and poison. Among the 5 heads, little light was in the middle, next to little fire and little wind, and further outside were little blue and little purple. The cold gazes of the 5 heads all landed on Crosser, faintly emitting a strong aura of hatred. Just like how demons would feel fear when they met Hao Yue would also feel intense hatred when they met demon gods. Could it be that their bloodlines were innately incompatible? Long Haochen did not understand this. After all, Hao Yue did not exist in this space. Why did it have so much hatred for demons? It was probably because of the discord between their bloodlines. At the base of Hao Yue's thick neck, there was another bulge. This bulge was already huge, and according to Long Haochen's understanding of it, it could break out of its body at any time. In other words, Hao Yue might have evolved again. This might be its 6th head. Hao Yue let out another low roar, and a strong fighting spirit emanated from its body. It was actually asking Long Haochen to fight and directly attack Crosser. Of course, Long Haochen would not let it do that. After all, Hao Yue was only at the peak of the 7th grade. If it was seriously injured by the enemy's attack, Long Haochen's heart would ache. After a brief telepathic communication, Long Haochen had already risen and landed on Hao Yue's back. Yuting stayed there, standing on top of Baldy's head. She raised her staff and began chanting. Long Haochen did not summon the Star King here. There was a strong undead aura in the Tower of Eternity, and he did not want the Star King to be affected. However, apart from Hao Yue and Yuting, did Long Haochen have no other powers? Of course not. Even if he was not willing to use this power, he could not care less when facing the demon god. The strength that Crosser had displayed previously made Long Haochen deeply afraid, so he did not dare to hold back. For rays of light shot out from Long Haochen's chest at almost the same time. Blue and yellow rays appeared behind Long Haochen, while red and green rays appeared on both sides. The same tyrannical aura was emitted from their bodies. They were Holy Guards 9, 10, 11, and 12, the four powerhouses of the Holy Guards. As Long Houchin did not continue to enter the Tower of Eternity, the four Holy Guards did not continue to evolve and maintain their 7th grade cultivation base. However, with the assistance of 4 7th grade powerhouses, and each of them had their own specialties, it was also a great help to Long Houchin. Was this considered a gang fight? At this moment, such a strange thought appeared in Long Houchin's mind. Hao Yue, Yu Ting, the 4 Holy Guards, and Long Houchin himself. This was his full strength. This was already equivalent to a king-grade Monster Hunters team, or even much stronger. Crosser gradually calmed down in fear. He finally felt that his life was in danger. Long Houchin was not afraid, and he did not care about the 4 Holy Guards. However, Hao Yue's appearance made him panic. A faint golden mist rose around Long Houchin's body, accumulating power. An orange-red light immediately rose from the fine gold foundation battle armor, and the aria of the goddess of light, blue rain, and hibiscus of light in Long Houchin's hands also rose with their own light. With the support of the fine gold foundation battle armor, Long Houchin used his abundant spiritual energy to undo the seal on the aria of the goddess of light almost effortlessly. He also activated the epic grade light of blue rain and hibiscus of light. The 2 colors of orange and emerald green didn't match well, but after Long Houchin's golden light, they became exceptionally dazzling. Hao Yue's 5 big eyes rippled with a faint purple light, and even the 9 purple light patterns on Long Houchin's head lit up. Hao Yue's right front leg took half a step to the right and landed on the ground with a heavy thud. His entire body was embedded there like a boulder. 5 big heads, 5 different colors of light, rose at the same time. What was even more terrifying was that these 5 kinds of light weren't pure attacks. Light's brilliant world was directly connected to Long Houchin, and the other 4 heads were clearly preparing different spells. Apart from light, the other 4 heads were swaying slightly. Crosser was the demon god of insight, and no matter how afraid he was, he knew that he couldn't wait any longer. If all the enemies on the other side finished accumulating power, then he would definitely die. His desire to survive overcame his fear. Crosser let out a roar and rushed up like a dark blue bolt of lightning. The 6 wings on his back flapped with all their might, propelling him straight toward Long Houchin. Crosser could naturally tell that Long Houchin was the core of these enemies. As long as he could kill Long Houchin, then the other existences wouldn't be a threat to him. It was the same for Hao Yue. He could sense the contract between Hao Yue and Long Houchin. The 2 blades slashed out, but they weren't aimed at Long Houchin. 2 pitch-black rays of light slashed at 12 and 10. The demon god of insight's powerful locking ability made it impossible for the 2 Holy Guards to dodge. Crosser didn't even look at them. An ice-cold dark blue light erupted from his eyes and charged straight at Long Houchin's eyes. Mental shock. As a mental demon god, Crosser was best at all kinds of mental magic. With his stage 9 cultivation base, if the enemy was slightly weaker, their heads would explode and they would die instantly. Long Houchin didn't try to dodge. The most terrifying thing about Crosser was that he could rely on his powerful insight to make all his attacks land on the ground, making it impossible to dodge. Hao Yue roared at the same time, and the eyes of his 5 heads burst out with intense purple light. At that moment, Hao Yue and Long Houchin seemed to have become one. As Hao Yue's eyes flickered with purple light, Long Houchin's eyes turned purplish gold. The 4 Holy Guards met Crosser's blades at the same time. They couldn't dodge, and the powerful combat skills of the 4 Holy Guards were greatly suppressed. But even so, they had their own methods. 2 icy blue rays of light shot out from 11 staff at the same time and landed on the 2 black blades of light. Of course, this simple spell couldn't block the Ling Gang's light blade, but it slightly slowed down its attack speed. At this moment, 2 thick mud walls appeared in front of number 12 and number 10 respectively. What was even more strange was that as soon as the 2 earth walls appeared, they immediately changed. In the blink of an eye, the earth walls turned into earth balls that were at least 3 times thicker than before. At the same time, number 10 and number 12 Holy Guard retreated rapidly. Needless to say, Speed was number 10's forte. The enemy's attack couldn't be dodged, but it could extend the duration of the collision by increasing the distance. On the other side, 12 even slashed his blade at the ground and pushed his body backward rapidly through the reaction force. Boom, boom! The two earth balls shattered at the same time. However, 9's power was fully displayed at this moment. 9 earth walls appeared in front of Holy Guard 10 and Holy Guard 12 one after another. They transformed into spheres to block Clausel's attacks. When the Ling gang finally arrived in front of the two Holy Guards, they were blocked by two extremely thick diamond ice walls. Relying on their powerful control of magic, Holy Guard number 9 and Holy Guard number 11 helped Holy Guard number 10 and Holy Guard number 12 resist this attack. But even so, when 10 and 12 blocked the aftermath of the attack, they were still sent flying to the edge of the Tower of Eternity. This showed how powerful the demon god Crosser was, and how terrifying the suppression of a rank 9 powerhouse on a low-level opponent was. However, Crosser was at a disadvantage at this moment. The spiritual shock from his eyes landed on Long Houchen's purplish gold eyes, but it didn't have the slightest effect. It was as if Long Houchen's eyes had an additional shield, which blocked the power of the spiritual shock. At the same time, the aria of the Goddess of Light in Long Houchen's right hand slowly slashed out. This slash of Long Houchen's was very slow. His sword intent was contained, and the sword ray released by the aria of the Goddess of Light was completely restrained. The orange-red splendor flickered at the tip of the sword, faintly emitting a 7-colored golden light. That's right. Under the urging of Long Houchen's Ling Gang and sword intent, the aria of the Goddess of Light had already released a power close to that of a divine weapon. Of course, this wasn't just because of the advancement of Long Houchen's cultivation. More importantly, it was the nourishment of the two heavy swords by the meteorite. Yu Ting's body had fused with the saint's spiritual stove, which was the best nurturing power. The meteorite integrated into the saint's spiritual stove and nourished the two heavy swords, constantly improving their quality. Of course, this improvement wasn't over yet. With the continuous improvement of the quality of the two heavy swords, the consumption of the meteorite was also increasing, and the nourishment couldn't continue for too long. It was just that Yu Ting didn't have time to tell Long Houchen. But even so, the two heavy swords had now stabilized at the epic level, especially Blue Rain and Hibiscus of Light. They had originally only entered the epic level, and this time they completely relied on the nourishment of the meteorite to advance. The two swords parried, and the forward momentum came to a screeching halt. Crosser also didn't dare to use his own body to take this blow from Long Houchen. It was also at this time that a huge 6-winged seraph light shadow appeared behind Long Houchen. This light shadow directly attached to Long Houchen's back, immediately causing the light on his two swords to explode. Even with Long Houchen's mental strength, he was already unable to completely suppress the terrifying sword intent contained in the swords. The amplification from Yu Ting was the 8th grade light spell, Seraph's Kiss. The amplification effect of this skill was so powerful that it ranked at the top among Tier 8 light-type spells. It could increase the speed at which Long Houchen condensed light elements, and at the same time, transform all of his spiritual power into Ling Gang. It lasted for 30 seconds. In other words, the Seraph's Kiss skill could directly make Long Houchen a rank 9 powerhouse for 30 seconds. This amplification was already comparable to the Star King's Star Domain. It was just that the Star Domain lasted longer. Boom! 1 sword against 2 sabers. Long Houchen took 3 steps back, and the demon god of Insight's charge came to a halt. Long Houchen's attack ended, but the sharp sword intent attacked his body crazily, causing Crosser's entire body to turn cold and unable to connect with the next attack. However, the Ling Gang on Crosser's sabers was terrifying enough, and Long Houchen, who was knocked back, was also unable to connect. But no matter what, he still blocked Crosser's attack head-on. The battle had just begun. Hao Yue's 4 heads spat out 4 spells at the same time and attacked Crosser. What Xiao spat out was a fire dragon that wrapped around Crosser's body. What Xiaoqing sent out was a tornado made of wind blades. The wind fueled the fire, and it was a wind-fire combination skill. Xiaolan and Xiaozi also completed a dual-element combination skill. A purplish-blue spear hovered silently in the air, its tip pointing downwards. Just as Crossel was engulfed by the wind and fire vortex, this purplish-blue radiance silently descended from the sky, piercing straight for Crossel's head. With Hao Yue's support, Long Haochen crossed his swords in front of him and channeled all of his power into the two epic heavy swords, raising his spiritual power to the extreme. Immediately, the two heavy swords trembled slightly. The light they emitted became stronger and stronger. The light was strong, but the sword light was restrained. Long Haochen forcefully suppressed the sword intent exposed after the upgrade of Kiss of the Seraphim back into the sword. It looked like the aria of the goddess of light was now like an orange jelly, transparent, shiny, and full of tempting taste. As for blue rain and hibiscus of light, they were a dark green emerald color. They were full of vitality, just like the color of newly sprouted buds. The dense golden light mist rose again, and intense golden flames instantly rose from the light mist. Long Haochen was going all out. Facing Hao Yue's attack, Crosser's strength seemed to be clearly suppressed. His 100% ability was directly reduced by 20%, and he became extremely cautious. The two blades pointed to the sky and the ground, and a dark blue light spread out from his eyes again as he spun on the spot. He turned into a black pillar of light and collided with the two combination spells. The difference in cultivation was obvious at this moment. The vortex of wind and fire was the first to be broken, and the powerful cutting force and the fire dragons burning were completely unable to invade the black pillar of light. On the other hand, the ice spear that descended from the sky disappeared in a flash, not even leaving a trace behind. The black light converged and Crosser staggered back a step. On his left shoulder, there was a dark purple dot. His left arm fell limply to the ground. Hao Yue's attack had actually injured him. This was truly unbelievable. With Hao Yue's peak rank 7 cultivation, he had actually injured the rank 9 demon god of insight. The other 3 spells were all to pave the way for Little Purple's poison. Little Blue send in ice, and the ice instantly turned into water. Although only a drop quietly entered Crosser's defense, the terrifying paralyzing poison had completely paralyzed even the Tier 9 powerhouse's left arm. A demon god's resistance to poison was extremely high, but Hao Yue's poison was clearly extraordinary. Under the effect of this paralyzing poison, it would take some time for Crosser's arm to recover to normal. However, Long Haochen did not move. He was still accumulating strength, and the 4 holy guards were the ones who attacked. Crosser felt his body sink. Then, a sparkling light descended from the sky above his head. It was a diamond-like spear. At the same time, an icy blue halo instantly enveloped his body. The cold ice halo instantly exploded, producing an extreme chill. A red and a green figure took this opportunity to suddenly jump up and launch an almost crazy and fierce attack. However, it was precisely because of Hao Yue's paralyzing poison that Crosser completely calmed down. Hao Yue's attack had indeed injured him, but at the same time, Hao Yue's attack had also made Crosser realize that the creature in front of him that made him feel fear was inferior to him. As a demon god of insight, his strength was fully displayed in this situation. In such a disadvantageous situation, Crosser, who had calmed down, was definitely terrifying. He stomped his left foot heavily on the ground, and a layer of black light immediately burst out from his body, forcefully dissolving the ice halo of 11th Holy Guard. At the same time, it slowed down the diamond spear above his head. He raised the saber in his right hand, and this attack could be described as exquisite. A huge arc of light blade that was 270 degrees bloomed. The front of the light blade sliced straight at Long Haochen, and the top of the light blade happened to meet the diamond spear. As for the attacks from 10th and 12th Holy Guard behind him, his 6 wings seemed to have come to life, blocking high and low, blocking all the attacks of the 2 Holy Guards. The sparkling and translucent golden light transformed into a water droplet and collided with the black arc-shaped light blade. The light blade that was attacking Long Houchin actually shattered upon colliding with the tear-like golden water droplet. This was Yu Ting's second attack, and after this attack, Yu Ting's face clearly turned pale. Her cultivation base was equivalent to an elementary rank 8 light mage, relying on her cultivation base to block the attack of a rank 9 powerhouse. The power of this spell could be imagined. The Tear of the Goddess of Light, a rank 8 single-target spell, could only be cast by Yu Ting with the help of the aura of Long Houchin's oracle. Moreover, for her, this skill was already used beyond her level. The Tear of the Goddess of Light was at the peak of rank 8. Not only was Crosser's attack blocked, but even the saber in his hand had a hint of gold that was rapidly melting his dark spiritual power. Don't forget that in the Tower of Eternity, Long Houchin had another advantage, and that was spiritual power replenishment. Apart from the light attribute and death attribute, there were no other attributes that could be replenished here. At the beginning of the battle, Crosser did not notice it too much. However, as the battle progressed, he felt that something was wrong. In other words, the more spiritual power he consumed, the less he consumed. However, don't think that a prolonged battle would be advantageous to Long Houchin if he couldn't replenish his spiritual power. Crosser's attack could not be dodged, and the 4 holy guards could not do much in front of him. With the ability of the demon god of insight, it was impossible for him not to discover that his spiritual power could not be recovered. Once he was forced to a critical juncture, he would definitely jump over the wall and desperately counterattack. Therefore, Long Houchin had to raise his cultivation base to a strong enough realm to deal with him before he jumped over the wall. Ding! The diamond spear in the air instantly shattered, but it also caused Crosser's movements to pause slightly. The 4 holy guards and Yu Ting's magic bought a lot of time for Long Houchin. A mere undead creature dares to be impudent in front of me. Crosser was blocked one after another, and he was already infuriated. He narrowed his eyes, and a layer of dark blue light suddenly rippled out from his head, charging towards the 4 holy guards. The moment his dark blue light rippled, the 4 holy guards panicked. They suddenly turned into 4 streams of light and disappeared into the eternal melody. Even so, when they passed through the dark blue ripples, the streams of light they turned into dimmed a little. When the 4 holy guards first appeared, Crosser was fighting with Long Houchin, so he did not pay much attention to them. However, he soon discovered that these holy guards were actually undead creatures supported by the souls of powerhouses. As a spirit attribute demon god, he was innately the nemesis of undead creatures. The source of power of all undead creatures was soul fire, and his spiritual magic was best at destroying soul fire. Therefore, his mental attack was a devastating disaster for the 4 great holy guards. Their soul fire was far from enough to contend with Crosser, and they immediately fled in panic. Otherwise, once the soul fire was extinguished, they would never be able to resurrect again. Jade-like light shot out from the sky like rain and mist. The figure that suddenly exploded emitted a strong purplish-gold luster, and the mountain-like Hua had already disappeared into thin air. Armor transformation, fusion. Long Houchin's strongest combat strength erupted. However, Long Houchin's realm was not at the 9th rank after all. Only with the help of Hao Yue's armor could he fully display the power of the pair of heavy swords in his hands. Only then could he fight on the same level as the demon god Insight Crosser. At this moment, the paralyzing poison in Crosser's left arm had yet to be completely expelled. He was only facing Long Houchin's attack with one arm. That jade-green light was Long Houchin's unique creation, the demon vanquishing flash. The color of life brought about by blue rain and hibiscus of light enveloped all the routes Crosser could dodge. Can't you predict my attack? All right, I'll fight you head-on. Crosser raised the saber in his left hand, and the 9 saber shadows merged into one in the air. Ear-piercing collisions sounded continuously. The 2 of them passed by each other. Crosser was struck by Long Houchin's sword at least 3 times, leaving 3 small bloody holes on his body. They were all on his left shoulder. Dark blue blood flowed out and dripped onto the ground with a series of puffing sounds. Long Houchin did not come without a price. Crosser's powerful judgment allowed one of his 9 blades to slash across Long Houchin's chest armor. However, the fine gold foundation armor that had turned purplish gold only caved in slightly before immediately returning to normal. It did not even trigger the life-sharing of the soul chain. Crosser narrowed his eyes, but his drooping left arm moved. He had deliberately let Long Houchin stab him in order to hit Long Houchin and detoxify himself. Blood flowed, and his left arm began to feel a little. Long Houchin's attack did not stop. The moment the two sides separated, he tapped the ground with the tip of his left foot and pounced at Crosser like a bolt of purplish gold lightning. The aria of the goddess of light in his right hand burst forth with an incomparably dazzling brilliance. The sparkling and translucent orange-red Ling Gang pierced through the sword and slashed at Crosser with a shocking rainbow in the air. It was light-speed flash and azure slash. The blue rain and hibiscus of light in his left hand seemed to have disappeared, and the green light faded. But it was even more threatening. A hint of panic appeared in Crosser's eyes. It was precisely because he could determine what Long Houchin was going to do through insight that he panicked even more. This was because he could not withstand this attack. After fusing with Hao Yue, Long Houchin's strength was enough to fight him head-on. Long Houchin could not last long, but Crosser could not recover his spirit energy here either. Therefore, it was hard to say who would win and who would lose. He raised the saber in his right hand. At the same time, Crosser's body suddenly became illusory. 8 phantoms separated from his body in a row. As soon as each phantom separated, it immediately became corporeal and spread out in all directions. Clang! Amidst the violent rumble, Crosser's body collided with the Ling Gang, slashed out by the aria of the goddess of light, and immediately retreated. He wanted to merge into his clones. However, right at this moment, a dark green light flashed before disappearing. Crosser only had time to use the hilt of the saber in his right hand to knock the green light, but it was only slightly askew. He twisted his body with all his might to avoid his vital points as much as possible. Azura Stab. The Azura Stab of blue rain and hibiscus of light. Chapter 200. Puffed. Dark blue blood burst out, leaving a long blood stain on Crosser's waist. Although the demon gods' external spiritual power was strong, their defense was not enough to protect themselves against the attack of an epic weapon. However, even though Crosser was struck, he still smoothly backed up. The other 8 clones swarmed over, all of them identical, mixing together with Crosser's real body, and then quickly separating. Long Houchin narrowed his eyes and snorted in disdain. He suddenly closed his eyes and swung the aria of the goddess of light in his right hand upwards. A red light flew out as if it had eyes. At the same time, a golden light suddenly flew behind Long Houchin. A golden light connected to Long Houchin, and a white light shot out at the same time, chasing after the red light and flying towards one of the 9 demon god Insight Crosser. You forgot that the knight has a skill called Lock-On, and you also forgot that the knight has a spiritual stove called Holy Guide. Long Houchin's clear voice echoed in the first floor of the Tower of Eternity. The red light quickly landed on one of Crosser's bodies, and then the white light became a bridge between him and Long Houchin. Stamping his right foot on the ground, Long Houchin burst out again. At the same time, a layer of scarlet light lit up on his body. He could already feel that the time he had fused with Hao Yue was passing quickly, and there were not many times he could maintain his strongest attack. He had to kill his opponent in a short time, or else he could only think of a way to escape. Sacrifice. Long Houchin had not used this skill for a long time, and he finally used it this time. It was the same sacrifice skill, but Long Houchin was surprised to find that the increase this time was more powerful than ever. This was because of the increase in his external and internal spiritual power. His body's endurance was stronger, and his potential as a favored was greater. The effect of the sacrifice skill on him was greater. Aria of the goddess of light, blue rain, and hibiscus of light all burst out with 2 light blades. and the solid Lingang looked no different from the sword itself. The terrifying spiritual power caused the two divine swords to emit a slight buzzing sound. A loud dragon roar sounded from Long Houchen. He didn't care about the other 8 clones and rushed straight to Crosser's body. The golden light dragon rushed out horizontally, and the two divine swords were like two bright and dazzling eyes of the light dragon. It was the Punishment Knight's skill, Rising Dragon Strike. Just as the Rising Dragon Strike was about to hit Crosser, the 9 Crosser figures suddenly distorted at the same time. Then, the Rising Dragon Strike that Long Houchen had transformed into suddenly turned around under the influence of the Saint's spiritual stove and the lock-on, striking a figure on the side. Boom! The 9 figures merged into one, and Crosser staggered back. Although his 8 clones didn't confuse Long Houchen, he quickly transferred his body at the last moment, thus restraining Long Houchen's attack to a certain extent. But even so, Long Houchen's attack power in the state of sacrifice was too strong. All kinds of amplifications superimposed together could only be described as terrifying. Fortunately, Crosser's left arm had regained the ability to move. Although it was still a little stiff compared to his right arm, it was better than fighting Long Houchen with one arm. Dodging and assaulting, Long Houchen's offensive broke out in an instant. With the gradual deepening of his understanding of sword intent, he could now integrate sword intent into his skills. In a state of complete victory of the two holy swords, any skill used was extremely terrifying. The two swords' glorious sun slash, one orange and one emerald green, appeared in the air at the same time and fell toward Crosser like meteors chasing the moon. Crosser's long sabers went up with all his might, and a dark blue light mixed with his own dark spiritual power erupted, forming a thick dark blue shield like a shield as he raised the long sabers. Boom, boom. Amidst 2 violent explosions, Crosser retreated as if he had been electrocuted. The blacklight shield shattered, and a huge gap was left on each of the long sabers in his hands. The unparalleled sword intent covered his body with a layer of green and orange light. Crosser raised his head and spat out a mouthful of dark blue blood at Long Houchen. The blood was mixed with a large amount of orange and green spiritual power. It made a series of puffing sounds in the air. Long Houchen's sword intent had dissolved the destructive power from the blood. It could be seen that Long Houchen's sword intent had actually invaded Crosser's body. Long Houchen was merciless. His purple gold figure almost slid on the ground as he caught up to Crosser in an instant. He raised his swords at the same time and used Demon Destruction Flash. Countless light shadows covered Crosser. At this moment, Crosser's face was already deathly pale. With a loud shout, his body suddenly squatted down. Soon after, a layer of pitch-black light suddenly surged out from his forehead, covering his body like a giant egg. Amidst a series of ear-piercing buzzes, the giant egg was instantly riddled with holes. However, a strange scene appeared. The giant egg suddenly moved horizontally with the same light shadow. The previous giant egg shattered, and then the giant egg broke open. Crosser suddenly rushed out and swept his saber at Long Houchen. With Crosser's ability to see through the demon god, he could naturally tell that Long Houchen's special state could not last long. That was why he had been passively defending. As long as he stalled for enough time, Long Houchen would definitely collapse on his own. However, he soon realized that this method was not working. He could not withstand Long Houchen's combat power by completely passively defending. Therefore, after using a secret technique to block Long Houchen's Demon Destruction Flash, Crosser immediately launched a counterattack. Attack was the best defense. However, just as Crosser was about to counterattack, he did not expect Long Houchen's next move. Long Houchen, who was supposed to continue attacking, suddenly turned into a stream of light and quickly retreated. Lightspeed Flash was also extremely fast when used to retreat, and Crosser's attack instantly missed. Amidst a loud dragon roar, a jade-green dragon surged out from Long Houchen's left hand. It was the time when Crosser attacked and did not have time to change his move. Moreover, under Long Houchen's previous series of attacks, he was under too much pressure and he was locked onto by Long Houchen. It was impossible for him to dodge. Amidst an intense explosion, the two long sabers in Crosser's hands broke. Although his two long sabers were not at the epic stage, they were not far from it. Crosser could not help but feel his heart ache for them to be destroyed under Long Houchen's series of attacks. However, a long saber was a long saber after all. Even if it was broken, there was still about half of it above the hilt. Therefore, Crosser did not abandon it. Instead, he tried his best to activate the long saber in an attempt to resolve the predicament in front of him. The immense impact produced by the jade-green dragon caused the demon god Insight to spit out blood again. What shocked him even more was that the jade-green dragon actually entangled his body, and the powerful binding force made it impossible for him to rush out for a while. Light Rain Double Dragon Draw, an additional skill of Blue Rain and Hibiscus of Light. Long Houchen had endured for so long and finally launched an attack that decided the outcome. After a series of blows and weakening, he believed that Crosser would no longer be able to block his final attack. The two swords separated on both sides of his body. Long Houchen took a deep breath and instantly gathered the last of his spiritual energy in the sacrifice state. Two shocking rays of light, jade green and orange red, suddenly shot out and crisscrossed. Crisscrossed was definitely a very ordinary skill among Long Houchen's Discipline Knight skills. However, when used with the two divine swords in his hands, they could turn simple into complicated and rotten into magical. It produced an effect similar to the dual swords combination. After Long Houchen used that effect for the first time, he had also tried to use other abilities to bring out the effect of the dual swords combination. But it turned out that at least with his current cultivation, only the cross slash could make the two divine swords reach a compatible intersection point. Two dazzling lights shone at the same time, and the powerful Ling Gang fused in the air. A buzzing sound echoed in the air like immortal music. The aria of the goddess of light, Blue Rain, and Hibiscus of Light were once again compatible. It emitted a faint blue light. It was like the first ray of dawn illuminating the sky in the morning. The combination of water and light meant life. This sword seemed to be searching for the profundity of the origin of life. The leisurely blue light and the crisscross cross finally fused into one point and lightly sank into the chest of the demon god Insight Crosser. Along with the increase in his strength and understanding of his abilities, Long Houchen's most powerful attack with multiple enhancements had also clearly improved. Crosser's body, which was struggling with all his might, suddenly froze. His gaze also became dull, and the binding force of the Light Rain Double Dragon Draw. No, it should be called the Light Rain Jade Dragon Draw now. Boom! Countless blue lights burst out from Crosser's body. The light of dawn that burst out from the darkness instantly shattered his body. At this moment, Long Houchen, who had exhausted all his strength, sat on the ground dejectedly. Hao Yue was released from his body and immediately returned to his space. Yiting also entered Long Houchen's body. Long Houchen was able to maintain his strongest state for so long because of Yiting's buff. The pair of divine swords in Long Houchen's hands had lost their luster, and he didn't even have the strength to retract them into his body. However, Long Houchen's eyes didn't ease up because of Crosser's explosion. Instead, they revealed intense shock. "You didn't expect this, did you, human?" Crosser's mocking voice sounded. Among the broken corpses, a small body that was only 2 feet tall crawled out. It was precisely because Crosser's aura did not disappear that Long Houchen did not relax his vigilance. The situation before him had completely exceeded his expectations. Crosser was clearly dead, but why did a miniature version of him appear? The 2-foot-tall figure also had 6 black wings on its back. Its head was very large, almost occupying half of its entire body. There were only a few sparse yellow hairs on its head, and its eyes emitted a deathly white color. Its limbs were extremely thin and small, and so was its body. It formed a sharp contrast with its huge head, and its yellow teeth emitted a foul stench. A faint aura of darkness emanated from his body. There were at least a dozen bone-deep wounds on his body. A corner of his huge head had even been cut off, and one could see the white grooves wriggling like worms inside. It was as disgusting as one could imagine. In particular, his voice had also become abnormally hoarse, sounding like the cawing of a crow. "You?" Long Houchin stared blankly at this unknown creature, momentarily speechless. The 2-foot-tall figure chuckled. "I'm the demon god of insight, Crosser. To be precise, I'm Crosser's main body. Among the 72 demon gods, my strength isn't much, but in terms of survivability, few of them can compare to me. What you killed was only my parasite. Speaking of which, it's really difficult to nurture such a parasite. I need to find a near-perfect body among you humans to satisfy me. Then, I'll have to spend several years to completely occupy it and channel more than 90% of my strength into the parasite. However, no matter how difficult it is, it's worth it. At least the parasite is perfect, and it's my second life. That skill you just used was indeed terrifying. It can even be compared to the top 36 demon gods. It's a pity that you can only kill my parasites. Judging from your voice, you shouldn't be old. I hope you're handsome enough. You've even used the sacrifice skill. I'm sure it'll be difficult for you to raise a finger now. Quickly take off the mask on your face and let me have a look. If I'm satisfied, although your soul will be erased, at least your body can be fused with mine. To you, this is such an honor." At this point, Crosser could not help but laugh out loud, but his laughter was filled with coldness and cruelty. He hated Long Houchin to the core. It was extremely difficult to nurture a parasite. Once the parasite was killed, it would take at least 5 years for him to recover his original strength. Furthermore, his vitality would be greatly damaged. It would take as long as 10 years for his vitality to fully recover. That was why Crosser was in no hurry to kill Long Houchin now that he had the upper hand. He wouldn't rest until he tortured Long Houchin to the point where he wished he was dead. Long Houchin seemed to be very afraid. His body trembled slightly as he let go of blue rain and hibiscus of light with his left hand. He slowly raised his hand and took off his mask. At this moment, it was indeed difficult for him to even raise his hand. Fusing with Hao Yue and using the sacrifice skill caused him to be at the end of his rope. Yu Ting and Hao Yue were also weak and had fallen into a deep sleep. The 4 holy guards were afraid of Crosser's ferocity and did not dare to appear. In front of him, there seemed to be only death. The mask was taken off with some difficulty, revealing Long Houchin's pale, but still extremely handsome face. The Son of Light was synonymous with perfection. Although the demon god inside Crosser's original parasite was handsome, he was far inferior to Long Houchin. Be it appearance or temperament, they were worlds apart. Hence, when Crosser saw Long Houchin's handsome appearance, he was stunned. His previous anger was instantly replaced by ecstasy. With his insight, he could naturally tell that Long Houchin was 100 times stronger than his previous parasite. His temperament and body were so perfect. If he could use him as his parasite, perhaps it would be worth it to spend another 5 years to recover. Just as Crosser was dancing excitedly, a sparkling orange-red light suddenly shot out without warning. The orange-red light was so magnificent that it was like a long rainbow cutting through the sky, instantly piercing through Crosser's head. Crosser's excited gaze suddenly turned dull, and his body staggered back a few steps before falling to the ground. Was it that the aura of the goddess of light that pierced through his head? That sharp, epic-level orange-red light was the magnificent luster of this divine sword. Long Houchin collapsed to the ground, panting heavily. The clothes under the golden foundation armor were already drenched in sweat. At this moment, he was so weak that he couldn't even lift a finger. However, his eyes were still fixed on Crosser until a dark blue, crown-like light broke out of his body and flew crazily to the side. Long Houchin finally heaved a sigh of relief. The appearance of the demon god's crown meant that the demon god of insight, Crosser, was really dead. Your ability has indeed exceeded my expectations. As expected of one of the 72 demon gods of the demons, Long Houchin said with a sigh. Although he could not move, he could still speak. The battle just now had given him a deep feeling. Although he was not injured, the danger of the battle just now was even greater than when Kai Er awakened as a Grim Reaper. At that time, Long Houchin could at least control the time he left through the eternal melody. But just now he was really at the end of his rope. Crosser was too cunning. His body was actually a parasite, and his main body was hidden in the parasite. At a critical moment, he could escape through the parasite. This was something that Long Houchin could never have imagined. No one could have imagined. Perhaps even the demon gods did not know about Crosser's ability. When Long Houchin saw that Crosser was still alive, he felt a little hopeless. He could sense Crosser's strength at that time. The death of the parasite had greatly weakened Crosser. Furthermore, his main body had also been severely injured. In terms of spiritual power, Crosser was at most equivalent to a Tier 7 cultivator. Having lost 90% of his strength, he was already very weak, especially his body. Because he had been parasitizing that tall and handsome body, he had already degenerated severely. His external spiritual power was infinitely close to zero. However, such a Crosser was fatal to Long Houchin, who was unable to move at all. At this moment of life and death, Long Houchin tried his best to calm himself down. He knew that he only had one chance, and it was also his last chance. Crosser relaxed because of Long Houchin's physical condition. With his demon god insight ability, he could sense Long Houchin's weakness, so he was not on guard at all. Long Houchin took off his mask to find the best opportunity for himself. Although Crosser was also very weak at that time, once his final attack was blocked, he would have no chance of survival. The exhaustion of the spiritual power in his body made him unable to resist Crosser. He did not even dare to teleport. In his current state, if he were to teleport through the eternal melody, he might be torn apart by the space-time turbulence. Just as Long Houchin had expected, Crosser, who had lost his parasite, needed a new body. When he saw Long Houchin's appearance, his excitement lowered his vigilance to the minimum. At this moment, Long Houchin launched his attack. Shenghua, the Punishment Knight's powerful attack amplification skill. Long Houchin used his mental power to split Shenghua's skill into two parts. One part triggered the aria of the Goddess of Light, and the other part became its thrust. That was how it pierced through Crosser's head and succeeded in one strike. Where did Shenghua's power come from? Speaking of which, Long Houchin was filled with gratitude towards Shengyu. Didn't this Saint Flower skill of his come from the Saint Moon Knight's lineage of the Assassin Temples, Saint Moon Knight's graft? Long Houchin would always store such a skill in his body in case of emergencies. There were certain restrictions to grafting. Skills that were too powerful and overbearing could not be stored, or they would harm his body. Shenghua was what Long Houchin thought was the most useful. His spiritual power was immense, and it was conducive to transformation and amplification. It could have unexpected effects. Therefore, under normal circumstances, he would store Shenghua in his body. Who would have thought that he would be able to save his own life today by relying on the grafting technique? Crosser's trump card had been revealed at the right time, but it was his biggest mistake not to kill Long Houchin immediately. Long Houchin had won this battle by a fluke, and Crosser's final plot had almost succeeded. Recalling what had happened just now, Long Houchin was still filled with fear. The 72 demon gods of the demons were indeed not easy to deal with. This was only the 49th ranked demon god. What about the ones ranked higher? How powerful would they be? Long Houchin still deeply remembered the powerlessness he felt when he was trapped by Samakina. If Samakina hadn't been unlucky enough to encounter the Tower of Eternity, Long Houchin would have died in battle. Reflecting on the painful experience, Long Houchin slowly closed his eyes to rest. His body needed time to recover from the overdraft, and the same was true for the spiritual power in his body. Crosser was already dead, and he had plenty of time to recuperate. As for the demon god's crown, it would be strange if it could escape. This was the Tower of Eternity. Without Long Houchin's teleportation, no creature could get out unless the demon god's crown could reach the level of a supreme artifact. Then there might be a chance. Therefore, Long Houchin was not in a hurry at all. He would let it run into a wall in the Tower of Eternity. After resting for an hour, Long Houchin had the strength to sit up and eat a few pills refined by Lin Xin to recover his strength. He then recovered his spiritual power through cultivation. It had to be said that the fine gold-based battlesuit was worthy of the reputation of epic equipment. During Long Houchen's rest, the fine gold-based battlesuit had absorbed a large amount of light elements and converted them into spiritual power. As soon as he began to cultivate, he immediately extracted a large amount of spiritual power from the fine gold-based battlesuit to replenish himself. In just a short while, Long Houchen's more than 30,000 spiritual power had been completely restored. It was just that the weakness of his body still needed time to recuperate. Jumping up, Long Houchen stretched his body hard. Although the feeling of weakness was uncomfortable, the joy in his heart and the excitement of killing the demon god made him feel good. The demon god's crown of Insight Crosser was still rushing left and right on the first floor of the Tower of Eternity. However, the dark aura in the air had been cleansed, and there was not even a trace of blood left. The Tower of Eternity even emitted a large amount of light elements for Long Houchen to absorb. Speaking of which, the Tower of Eternity was also a winner this time. The soul of a demon god was a great supplement to it. Not in a hurry to grab the demon god's crown, Long Houchen closed his eyes and contacted Haoyue through the blood contract. Haoyue was on the verge of advancing. If he could get the energy of the demon god's crown, it would definitely be of great benefit to his advancement. With a flash of purple light, Haoyue once again descended on the Tower of Eternity. Because of the previous fusion with Long Houchen, he looked a little tired. Haoyue absorbed it. Long Houchen pointed to the demon god's crown in the air. There was obvious excitement in the eyes of Haoyue's 5 heads. Little Light looked up and spat out a faint purple light at the demon god's crown. Suddenly, the demon god's crown, which was rushing left and right, quieted down and was absorbed in front of Little Light in an instant. Little Light opened his mouth and swallowed it. At the same time, Haoyue's thoughts also sounded in Long Houchen's mind. Master, I can't absorb for the time being. Wait until we recover. I need your help. Long Houchen naturally understood what it meant. Haoyue's breakthrough needed protection. With the previous example, Haoyue would now completely evolve his body to the brink of eruption before completing the final step, shortening the evolution time as much as possible. But there was still a certain degree of danger. With Long Houchen's protection, it would naturally be much safer. Okay, as soon as my strength recovers, I will immediately help you complete the evolution. Haoyue's 5 heads intimately stuck to Long Houchen's body and lightly rubbed against it. At this moment, Little Light's golden eyes suddenly showed some astonishment. Its big head moved in front of Long Houchen, opened its mouth, and stuck out its pink tongue. Long Houchen thought it was going to lick him, and immediately smiled and took a step back to avoid it. But very quickly, his eyes revealed a look of surprise. On the tip of Little Light's tongue was a sparkling and translucent gem. Within the gem, there was a faint dark blue halo flickering. What is this? Long Houchen looked at Haoyue, puzzled. Little Light did not directly answer, but muttered a few incantations. A golden light suddenly fell on Long Houchen's body. Light flickered, and the exhausted Yiting was actually pulled out of Long Houchen's body by this golden light. Haoyue had this ability? Long Houchen was taken aback. Yiting looked at Haoyue, seemingly a little afraid. But very quickly, she saw the gem on the tip of Haoyue's tongue, and immediately let out a cheer. Is this for me? Thank you, Haoyue. Yiting unceremoniously pinched the exquisite gem in her hand, excitedly moved in front of Little Light's big head, and kissed its forehead. Because they were both of the light attribute, Yiting was still the closest to Little Light among Haoyue's 5 big heads. Yiting, what is this? Long Houchen curiously asked. Yiting replied, it should be that bad, guys. I really want to fuse with it. Master, can I? It seems to be able to trigger the evolution of the Saint's spiritual stove's power. Long Houchen was overjoyed, then hurry up and fuse with it. Crosser actually left behind such a good thing. Long Houchen was quite afraid of his Insight spirit guiding technique. If the Saint's spiritual stove could also have an ability similar to the Insight spirit guiding technique, it would certainly be of great benefit to his and his companions' operations among the demons. Yuting giggled. Thank you, master. With that, she immediately turned into a stream of light and once again merged into Long Haochen's body, disappearing without a trace. Hao Yue also nodded to Long Haochen, turned into a purple light, and returned to his world to rest. He was about to break through again and needed to adjust his body's condition to its peak. Long Haochen once again summoned the 4 holy guards and had them clean up Crosser's corpse, and then the 11th holy guard froze the corpse. Afraid that his companions would be worried, he didn't delay any longer. Carrying Crosser's corpse, he urged the eternal melody to bloom with the golden light of teleportation. Southeast Stronghold. At this time, the atmosphere of this impregnable pass, one of the 6 great human Temple League strongholds, was somewhat strange. The demon army had already retreated, leaving only a large number of corpses outside the city. Some of them human, but most of them demons. According to the situation of previous wars, at this time, the Southeast Stronghold should have cleaned up the battlefield. But today was different. The sky had already darkened, but the Southeast Stronghold was brightly lit, with a somewhat serious atmosphere, but there was not the slightest intention of cleaning up the battlefield. The situation of the demons in the distance was also very subtle. Although the army had retreated, the 8 demon god pillars did not change their position, still flickering with light. The 7 demon gods, led by the angel demon god Paimon, each stuck close to their demon god pillars, looking at the Southeast Stronghold. The 2 sides actually confronted each other from such a distance, and no one had the intention of withdrawing. This scene was clearly because Long Haochen and the demon god Insight Crosser had disappeared together. At that time, Crosser had used the Insight Spirit guiding spell on Long Haochen, and the warrior temple master Qiu Yonghao had already sensed that something was wrong. He immediately led the powerhouses of the warrior temple to launch an all-out attack on the demons. Qiu Yonghao had vaguely guessed Long Haochen's identity, and he had no choice but to go all out. Once the Insight Spirit guiding spell succeeded, Long Haochen would be besieged by the 8 demon gods, and he would definitely die. However, when he led the powerhouses of the warrior temple to fight the 7 demon gods, and no one gained the upper hand, he was surprised to discover that Crosser had disappeared among the demon gods. Thinking back to the previous entanglement of the golden light and the Insight Spirit guiding spell, Qiu Yonghao was confused. That was because Paimon and the others were also confused. Hence, the 2 sides seemed to have reached an agreement. The demons retreated, and Qiu Yonghao led the powerhouses of the warrior temple back to the fortress. He immediately summoned Wang Yuan and the others to ask about the situation. Of course, Wang Yuan and the others would not tell Qiu Yonghao about the existence of the Tower of Eternity. They only said that Long Haochen had a very powerful teleportation equipment that had a strange resonance with the Insight Spirit guiding spell. There was a mutation. They did not know what exactly was going on. Because the life-sharing effect of the soul chain had appeared once, Wang Yuan and the others felt that Long Haochen was at least safe for now, but it was very likely that he was fighting with the demon god Insight Crosser. That was a demon god ranked 49th. They were all burning with anxiety, but there was nothing they could do. Fortunately, the life-sharing effect did not continue, so they could only wait anxiously. Mutation meant uncertainty. After careful consideration, Qiu Yonghao naturally could not retreat just like that. Han Yu only said that the Adamantine Knight was the acting Holy Knight, but he did not say Long Haochen's name. However, with Qiu Yonghao's shrewdness, he was even more certain of his guess. It was the same for the demons. Crosser had disappeared with the other knight. There was no black fog shrouding the southeastern fortress, so they could see more clearly than the humans. They did not know what was going on, so they could only wait. Time passed. Paimon turned to look at Crosser's demon god pillar from time to time. The halo on his demon god pillar kept flickering, but it was completely contained. This meant that Crosser was fighting, but he could not borrow the power of the demon god pillar where he was fighting. However, as long as the light of the demon god pillar was still there, it meant that Crosser was still alive. The angel demon god Paimon had a good relationship with the demon god Insight Crosser, and he was the one who had taken the initiative to let Crosser used the insight spirit guiding spell. He was naturally extremely anxious. In Paimon's opinion, Crosser's combat strength was nothing much, but his strange abilities were very important to Paimon. With the help of Crosser's insight, he could save a lot of effort whether it was deploying troops or ambushing opponents. Just as both sides were getting more and more anxious, but they could confirm that their side was fine, something happened. The demon god inside Crosser's demon god pillar suddenly flickered faster, and the intense flickering frequency attracted the attention of both sides. Xiao Yonghao's eyes widened. The last thing he wanted to see was Crosser returning safely and Long Haochen dying in battle, or Crosser appearing on the demon's side with Long Haochen. He had already given the order to lead the experts of the warrior temple to launch another surprise attack at any time. Paimon was also shocked. His thoughts are the opposite of Qiu Yonghao's. The violent fluctuations in the demon god pillar proved that the battle on Crosser's side was very intense. However, he could not help in a battle across space. The atmosphere between the demons and the humans became tense. At this moment, the demon god inside Crosser's demon god pillar suddenly shone brightly. The dazzling light could be seen clearly even from the top of the southeastern fortress. The light of the other 7 demon god pillars was almost instantly overshadowed by its light. This is, just as Qiu Yonghao was about to take action, the extremely bright demon god pillar suddenly extinguished without warning. All the light converged, and all the vitality disappeared with the light. It looked like an ordinary stone pillar. Chapter 201. The light of the demon god insight's demon god pillar suddenly extinguished, and the aura of both armies changed drastically. The top experts on both sides were stunned. After a brief daze, Angel Demon God Paimon's first reaction was that it was impossible. He could not believe that a knight on a golden pedestal could kill Crosser. Even if Crosser had injured his essence energy from using the Insight Spirit drawing spell, with his support, he shouldn't have suffered much damage. As for the knight on a golden pedestal, he was usually only at the 8th grade. So what if he was at the 9th grade? He knew Crosser's strength very well. With the Insight spell, it was almost impossible for him to lose unless the other party already had a domain. However, from the previous battle, he could tell that Long Haochen was an 8th grade knight. On the other side, Qiu Yonghao also had a look of disbelief on his face. But unlike Paimon, his disbelief was filled with surprise. After fighting the demons for so many years, he naturally knew what it meant for the demon god pillar to extinguish. The demon god inside Crosser's demon god pillar that gave him a headache had extinguished and he had died in battle. This was simply good news that couldn't be any better. For a moment, Qiu Yonghao could not help but laugh loudly and say, "Demon god insight Crosser died in battle." Upon hearing his reminder, the entire southeastern fortress immediately turned into a sea of joy. Cheers rose and fell. Although the warriors were already exhausted, they were boosted by the good news. For a moment, the faces of the experts in the warrior temple were filled with excitement. Only Long Haochen's companions could not laugh. It was true that Demon God Insight Crosser had been killed by Long Haochen, but Long Haochen had yet to turn around. If it wasn't for the fact that Long Haochen had not severed the connection with the soul chains and showed no signs of injury, they would have been even more anxious. All they could do now was continue waiting. After a brief moment of disbelief, Paimon gradually calmed down. The destruction of a demon god pillar was a huge blow to the demon's morale. No matter how much he wanted to take revenge, it wasn't a good time to attack. He had no choice but to order a retreat. At this time, Qiu Yonghao gave the order to clean up the battlefield, and the war finally came to a temporary end. However, the hatred between demons and humans only deepened. Qiu Yonghao flew to Wang Yuanyuan's side and asked in a low voice, "Is he not back yet?" Wang Yuanyuan nodded and said, "Judging from the situation, the acting Holy Knight commander should be fine. However, before he returns, anything can happen. We have to wait here for him to return before we can be at ease." Just like that, they waited for an entire 2 hours. When that dazzling golden light shone at the place where Long Haochen had disappeared, when he reappeared with Crossel's corpse at the top of the southeastern stronghold, The members of the 64th Commander Grade Demon Hunt Squad truly cheered. After casually tossing Crosser's corpse to Lin Xian, Long Haochen bowed respectfully to Qiu Yonghao. Acting Holy Knight Commander Jingjin No. 12 of the Knights Templars greets the Temple Master. Qiu Yonghao laughed and said, "We're all on the same side, so why are you being so polite? Don't tell me I can't recognize you with this metal shell on? I didn't expect you to have grown to this extent in such a short period of time. I really regret it. I should have forced you to stay back then." If he still couldn't recognize the Holy Knight in front of him after hearing Long Haochen's voice, then he would have lived for more than 100 years in vain. Long Haochen said awkwardly, "Temple Master, you think too highly of me." Qiu Yonghao looked at the frozen corpse in Lin Xian's hand. "Did you really kill the demon god Insight in a one-on-one fight?" Long Haochen smiled bitterly. "It can't be said to be a one-on-one fight. It's just that this is my secret." Qiu Yonghao said, "All right, let's not talk about this for now. All of you, follow me back to the warrior temple. Have a good rest first, and then I'll hold a welcoming dinner for you." Not to mention the fact that Long Haochen had done the warrior temple a favor and was highly regarded by Qiu Yonghao. Just the contributions he had made for the warrior temple today and his identity as the acting Holy Knight Patriarch were enough for Qiu Yonghao to personally receive him. Compared to the Magic Temple, the Warrior Temple was clearly much more enthusiastic about the arrival of Long Haochen and the others. They arranged for them to stay in an excellent house behind the Warrior Temple. Qiu Yonghao even personally led the upper echelons of the Warrior Temple to hold a welcoming dinner for Long Haochen and the others after a day of rest. Long Haochen handed Long Tianing's letter to Qiu Yonghao, and his mission in the Warrior Temple was actually completed. Killing a rank 9 demon god like Crosser gave him 1,000,000 merit points. Qiu Yonghao wasn't a stingy person. Crosser's death was extremely important to the Warrior Temple. Therefore, he specially rewarded Long Haochen with 500,000 merit points. At this point, even Long Haochen didn't know how many merit points he had stored in his merit token. But what was certain was that it was definitely an astronomical figure. 3 demon gods had already died at their hands, and the death of Flaming Lion Demon and Luo Xian was closely related to him. It could be said to be luck, but it could also be said to be strength. 4 of the 72 demon god pillars had been lost on the main battlefield, and the demon god crowns hadn't escaped. They wouldn't be able to recover for at least a few decades. To the demons, this was definitely the most direct blow. After killing the demon god Insight, Long Haochen believed that he had contributed greatly to the southeastern fortress. They could leave immediately and continue heading south to meet up with the others. However, Long Haochen wasn't in a hurry. That was because he had more important things to do. At the same time, he also needed time to recover. It was unknown if it was because Crosser's death was a huge blow to the demons, but the demons stopped attacking. In the blink of an eye, 7 days passed. In the past 7 days, Long Haochen had fully realized how terrifying the sacrifice skill was. It was precisely the sacrifice skill that gave him the strength to kill Crosser. But at the same time, he had been weak for 7 days before he fully recovered. The experience of fighting demon gods was very important, and Long Haochen deliberately recounted the entire process to his companions, including Zhang Fangfang. From Wang Yuan, Long Haochen learned everything that Zhang Fangfang had done for her. The monster hunter's leader, who had lost his companion, had truly gained the trust of Long Haochen and the others. Zhang Fangfang's situation was different from Lin Xian's. He was alone, and he was a knight. It could be said that he had nothing to worry about. After discussing with his companions, Long Haochen decided to temporarily absorb him into the commander-level Monster Hunt 64. Even though it was beyond the establishment of monster hunters, Zhang Fangfang was willing to do it. Moreover, the situation of Long Haochen's team was special. He would not report to the Monster Hunter's mission tower. As for the Knights Templars, there was no problem. He was now the acting Holy Knight leader, and he did not need to report to anyone when he transferred a Temple Knight to follow him. Is everyone ready? Long Haochen looked at his companions around him. At this time, everyone was in their military uniform. After a week of rest, Wang Yuan and Zhang Fangfang had fully recovered. At this time, she was in high spirits, and her cold, murderous aura was gone. Compared to 2 years ago, she was more mature in terms of cultivation, will, and body. Zhang Fangfang was more reserved. His calm demeanor was something that even Long Haochen could not compare to. After all, in terms of age, Zhang Fangfang had more maturity than him. Hearing Long Haochen's question, everyone nodded. At this time, they stood in a circle around Long Haochen. From the looks of it, they were ready to enter the battle at any time. Long Haochen said, Hao Yue is about to evolve again. It is very likely that he will evolve into a sixth head. Although the last evolution was very successful, we still have to be cautious. I'm starting. After receiving confirmation from his companions again, a golden light flashed in Long Haochen's eyes, and he activated Eternal Melody. He brought everyone into the Tower of Eternity, and then teleported back to the previous room alone, activating the blood contract teleportation with Hao Yue. That day, when he was fighting the demon god of Insight Crossell, Long Haochen discovered that Hao Yue was already on the verge of evolution. With Crossell's demon god crown, evolution would definitely not be a problem. However, from Hao Yue's emotions at that time, he could sense that the evolution this time would probably not be as smooth as when it evolved to fifth head. Therefore, Long Haochen and his companions stayed in the southeastern fortress. After their strength was fully restored, the first thing they would do was to help Hao Yue evolve successfully before moving on to the next step. There was no need for Long Haochen to explain anything. His companions also understood the importance of Hao Yue's evolution. Not to mention the close relationship between Hao Yue and Long Haochen. His ability to destroy the demon god pillars alone could be said to be the general class Monster Hunt 64's trump card. With a flash of purple light, Long Haochen once again came to the world of darkness and fire. Hao Yue was still in a cave. The arrival of Long Haochen made him very excited, and his 5 big heads immediately came up to him to show affection. A pair of huge wings also spread out behind him. As his body grew larger, Hao Yue also appeared more and more powerful. Although his cultivation was only at the peak of rank 7, Long Haochen always felt that Hao Yue's true strength was not as simple as it seemed. Hao Yue, are you ready? Long Haochen stroked their big heads one by one. With light in the lead, the 5 heads nodded at the same time, with some excitement, but also seemed a little nervous. Don't worry, I will definitely do my best to protect you. Long Haochen comforted. Hao Yue transmitted a thought to Long Haochen, actually taking him outside of the cave to evolve. Although Long Haochen felt strange, he did not ask too much. Hao Yue must have his reasons for doing this. After leaving the cave, Long Haochen could not help but sigh slightly. In this world of darkness and fire, it seemed that there would never be daylight. The turbid air made him not dare to breathe directly. He activated the holy light barrier to protect himself. The temperature of the air was so high that when he looked into the distance, he could actually see some distorted light in the shape of water. In this harsh environment, Hao Yue acted as if nothing had happened. His body slowly crept outside the cave entrance, and his 5 big heads raised at the same time, looking at the sky. He opened his mouth and actually swallowed the turbid air as if he wanted to absorb such air for cultivation. Golden light flashed, and his companions were teleported to Long Haochen's side one by one. They immediately took action. Long Haochen, Zhang Fangfang, Han Yu, and Wang Yuan stood guard in 4 different directions. Lin Xian was in the middle, while Kai directly disappeared beside Long Haochen. Hao Yue, we can begin. There was no time to lose. The earlier they finished, the earlier they could leave this world. Light opened his mouth, and a dark blue light floated out of it. It was the demon god's crown of Clausel. At this moment, the demon god's crown had clearly lost its spirituality. After flying out of Light's mouth, it simply floated in front of Light. Misty purple light began to radiate from Hao Yue's body. This time, it was no longer faint purple, but almost solid purple light. Long Houchin had only seen this purple light once when Haoyue destroyed the snake demon god Andamari's demon god pillar. 5 rays of purple light shot out from Haoyue's 5 big heads at the same time and shot at the demon god's crown. Immediately, with a boom, the demon god's crown instantly exploded, bursting out a large expanse of dark blue light. Little light, little fire, little green, little blue, and little purple devoured all the mist in the air like a whale sucking in water. At the same time, purple light filled with supreme majesty burst out of his body. The bulge that had already protruded began to wriggle violently. Roar! Haoyue's 5 big heads roared at the sky at the same time. Immediately, the intense purple light on its body turned into a huge pillar of light that shot into the sky. The filthy air in the surroundings melted like snow meeting boiling water, and the surrounding vision became clear. After the pillar of purple light shot to an extremely high position, it began to move rapidly, circling once in the air, outlining a purple hexagram. Immediately after, the thick purple light suddenly split into 5 parts, each pouring into a corner of the hexagram. The bulge on the side of Haoyue's neck burst open, and a new big head drilled out. As soon as it appeared, it also released a purple light pillar that shot into the sky, occupying the last empty space in the hexagram. Such a strange scene had never appeared in Haoyue's previous evolution. As the 6 rays of purple light poured into the purple hexagram, it immediately erupted with an unparalleled purple brilliance. It was as if a purple sun had suddenly appeared in the sky, bringing a layer of purple to the world that Long Houchin and the others could see. No wonder it had to come out to evolve. Haoyue's evolution this time was actually so powerful. It was impossible not to attract the attention of the undead creatures in this world. Haoyue's tail slowly rose up, and Long Houchin, who was the closest to it, could clearly hear that within Haoyue's body, its bones were making crisp, crackling sounds. This kind of rhythmic crackling sound made Long Houchin feel that all the bones in his body were aching. At the same time, the purple light pattern on his forehead also began to emit a dazzling light. He and Haoyue were connected by the most intimate blood contract. When Haoyue's body underwent a huge change, he would also feel it strongly. After sensing the change in Haoyue's body, Long Houchin immediately understood why Haoyue created this strange purple hexagram. To Haoyue, this should be a formation to absorb energy. When it evolved to 6 heads, its own strength was no longer enough to complete the entire evolution process. It had to absorb some special energy that belonged to this world to replenish itself, so that the evolution process could be completed perfectly. As expected, under the illumination of the purple hexagram, spots of purple dust began to appear in the air, and these tiny purple lights immediately gathered towards the purple hexagram like rivers flowing into the sea. At first, Long Houchin and the rest thought that their eyes were playing tricks on them, but soon the purple dust became more and more numerous and gathered from all directions. A shocking scene appeared. A large number of purple lights revolved around the 6 purple light pillars released by Haoyue, and like a huge purple tornado, they gathered towards the purple hexagram in the sky. This strange energy was then fed back to Haoyue's body through the hexagram. The purple color on Haoyue's body began to become thicker, and its thick body did not expand, but the scales on its body were completely evolving towards purple. After going through the evolution of the 5th head, Haoyue's scales turned dark purple, and now his scales were evolving towards the appearance of amethyst. Every scale became more plump, and gradually 3 ridges appeared on them, forming a shuttle shape. Just one scale alone gave people a magnificent feeling. The horns on Haoyue's 6 heads also emitted the light of its own attribute. On the 6th head, the yellow horn was like a crown, and it even looked a little like a cracked tomato. There was a faint brownish-red halo inside it. Earth attribute. Without a doubt, Haoyue's 6th head was of the earth attribute. The appearance of this head also complemented the basic elements of Haoyue's own attributes. Water, fire, earth, and wind gathered together, in addition to light and poison. Long Haochin suspected that Hao Yue's next head would evolve into the darkness attribute. If that was the case, it would have all 6 basic attributes. Long Haochin paid attention to the changes in Hao Yue's body, and at the same time, magnified his spiritual perception to feel everything in the outside world. Han Yu also summoned the evil eye. No, it should be called the evil eye overlord now. The evil eye, which had grown a lot in size, had a great increase in its abilities. However, when it saw Hao Yue, it could not help but shrink beside Han Yu in fear. It only calmed down after Han Yu repeatedly comforted it. This time, Hao Yue's body did not grow bigger, but instead, it seemed to shrink. Its originally mountain-like body gradually underwent some strange changes. Its lizard-like body became more dragon-like, less bloated, and more majestic. Coupled with the amethyst-like scales, it gave off an indescribable sense of beauty. The purple light in the sky became more and more intense, but Long Haochin's gaze also became serious. According to the situation when Hao Yue broke through in the past, the undead creatures that belong to this world should have already reacted when it caused such a huge commotion. However, until now, the undead creatures did not move at all, as if they did not sense its existence at all. However, the more it was like this, the more pressure Long Haochin felt. Vaguely, he seemed to feel an overwhelming pressure gradually forming. However, even with his spiritual perception, he could not detect if this pressure was real or where it was coming from. Time passed by, and the changes in Hao Yue's body were gradually completed. The huge purple hexagram in the sky continuously absorbed the purple light spots from all directions to replenish its body. Hao Yue's evolution also caused a strange change in Long Haochin's body. He felt that the spiritual power in his body began to rise again. The speed of the rise was not fast, but it seemed that the majesty that appeared on Hao Yue's body had also begun to appear on his body. In particular, the purple light pattern on his forehead became brighter and brighter. Even his eyes had become the same purple gold color as Hao Yue's. Long Haochin discovered that whether it was his adamant base armor, Sun Moon Divine Snail Shield, or Eternal Melody, these 3 pieces of equipment that were at least epic level or above began to tremble slightly after Hao Yue's aura appeared on his body, as if they were submitting to him. The most obvious feeling came from the Sun Moon Divine Snail Shield. Long Haochin slowly raised his left hand, and he was surprised to find that even in the absence of Ling Gang, the Sun Moon Divine Snail Shield began to emit a faint 7-colored golden light. That was the light of an artifact. Hao Yue, oh, Hao Yue, what a powerful existence you are. Your evolution seems to have been leading the evolution of my body. Long Haochin understood that after Hao Yue's evolution was completed, his strength should also be able to rise to a higher level. The improvement of spiritual power was secondary. It seemed that his body constitution had undergone a strange change again. After all, he was originally a god-favored, and the Son of Light's constitution was far superior to ordinary people. Under such circumstances, his constitution could still continue to improve. One could imagine how powerful Hao Yue's original existence was. Long Haochin faintly felt that Hao Yue's original strength seemed to be of a higher level than his and Kai Er's god-favored constitution. Of course, this was only his guess. Long Haochin had tried to ask Hao Yue, but every time Hao Yue just kept silent and did not give him any answer. Long Haochin had always treated Hao Yue as his good brother, so naturally, he would not force him to do anything. However, the more he did so, the more curious he was. He could accept Hao Yue in any situation, but it was impossible for him not to be curious. At this moment, the slight feeling that Long Haochin had from before became reality. The sky in the distance suddenly turned dark purple. In the beginning, Long Haochin thought that it was the strange purple light that Hao Yue had attracted, but he soon realized that it was not the case. This was because the dark purple light was not a light spot, but appeared in a large area like the light of dawn. Moreover, when the purple light appeared, a huge pressure that was like the power of heaven descended from the sky. When the pressure appeared, The world outside of the six-pointed star released by Hao Yue turned dark purple. Even the magma flowing in the cracks on the ground was no exception. Long Haochen sucked in a breath of cold air. What kind of power would be needed to achieve this? He could vaguely feel that the enemy that was about to appear was probably even stronger than the strongest person he had encountered on the battlefield, the undead demon god Samakina. Moreover, it was the undead demon god that was using the power of the demon god pillars. An existence of this level was probably the ruler of this world. Under the shock, Long Haochen became even calmer. He said in a low voice, "Prepare the conjoined spirit-increasing pill." "Yes," his companions replied in unison. They were all experienced and knowledgeable demon hunters. If Long Haochen could feel the strength of the enemy, they could naturally feel it too. Lin Xin passed a conjoined spirit-increasing pill to Zhang Fangfang, and the others each held one in their hands. This was their last trump card in the commander-level Monster Hunt 64. Ever since their cultivation had risen to rank 6, they had never used it. After Lin Xion's modification, the conjoined spirit-increasing pill was much more powerful than before. Not only could it enhance their conjoined spirit-increasing pill, but it could also improve their overall spiritual power. At the same time, there were fewer side effects. After all, the new version of the conjoined spirit-increasing pill was mainly made from the demonic crystal of a Lord-level demon. Naturally, it could not be compared to the previous version. The dark purple light became denser and denser. A faint sigh sounded in the air, and the huge pressure instantly increased to the extreme. Then, a figure appeared out of thin air. Yes, there was only one enemy. She had a slim figure, and she looked like a human as she floated in the air. She was shrouded in a large cloak that completely covered her head. In her right hand, she held a dark purple magic staff. Her magic staff looked like a long bone, and the purple light emitted from both ends was the most intense. Long Haochen took a step forward, and his companions immediately gathered behind him. At the same time, a golden light separated from his body. It was Yi Ting. The two divine swords were also handed to Long Haochen. After the dark purple figure appeared, she did not attack them immediately. Instead, she turned towards the hexagram that Hao Yue had set up in the sky. She slowly raised the staff in her hand, and a low but pleasant voice sounded in the air. It sounded like a woman's voice, but the language was something that Long Haochen and the others had never heard before. "Take the pill and follow me." Long Haochen let out a low grunt and was the first to toss the conjoined forest growth pill into his mouth. At the same time, the 4 golden wings on his back instantly unfurled. With a flash, he soared into the sky. The others also took the conjoined spirit-increasing pill at the same time and followed Long Haochen up into the sky. Long Haochen, Kair, Lin Xen, Wang Yuanyuan, Zhang Fangfang, Han Yu, all 6 of them, along with Yi Ting, flew up into the sky. The evil eye followed closely behind Han Yu, its tentacles wrapped around Han Yu's waist, as though Han Yu was carrying it on his back. Han Yu could clearly feel that the evil eye overlord's body had started to tremble violently after the figure appeared in the sky. It was an uncontrollable trembling, and an intense fear was transmitted into Han Yu's heart through the contract between them. This was definitely a Type 9 powerhouse, and definitely not an ordinary one. Han Yu was secretly shocked, but he did not warn Long Haochen. What he could feel, Long Haochen could naturally feel as well. This battle was going to be extremely difficult. With a pair of swords by his side, Long Haochen brought his companions and flew into the sky in a straight line. The people behind him all placed their hands on the shoulders of the person in front of them. A huge amount of spiritual energy began to flow into Long Haochen's body. The aria of the goddess of light, blue rain, and hibiscus of light began to emit a dazzling ling-yang. The orange, red, and turquoise colors were so obvious in the sky. The others also noticed that apart from the pure light elements around Long Haochen's body, there was an additional layer of faint purplish gold light, making him look even more majestic. Soon, Long Haochen and his companions arrived in front of the cloaked enemy, right between her and Hao Yue. Without saying a word, Long Haochen's swords had already slashed out. Cross-slash, the strongest attack skill he could use at the moment. With the support of his companions, Long Hao-Chen's spiritual energy broke through 100,000 in an instant. With the addition of the adamantine base armor, the power he could use now had reached the highest level in his life. Moreover, Long Hao-Chen was surprised to find that with so much spiritual energy flowing into his body, he did not feel bloated at all. Moreover, the spiritual acupoints that were faintly forming at his crotch had actually completed at this time. In other words, Long Hao-Chen had now opened as many as 7 spiritual acupoints. Opening spiritual acupoints was the most difficult and the most important for all high-level professions. As soon as these 2 spiritual acupoints were opened, Long Hao-Chen immediately felt that his cultivation had reached a higher level. The epic brilliance of the 2 divine swords condensed in the air, and that dark blue light flew straight towards the cloaked enemy. In the sky, because of the intervention of the third party, Long Hao-Chen and his companions, there was a strong spiritual energy fluctuation. As a god's favored, and with the strong support of his companions, Long Hao-Chen could definitely be described as the strongest person in the world at this time. After 2 years of accumulation, the commander-level monster Hunt 64 indeed had the strength to compete with the demons ranked after 36th. Ding! A melodious buzzing sound rang in the air. The enemy, who was chanting an incantation, stretched out her left hand from under her robe. It was a woman's hand that looked very slender and slender. Her white, jade-like palm was crystal clear. It could be said that it was the most beautiful palm that Long Hao-Chen and his companions had ever seen. However, this white, jade-like hand was a little too pale. It was so pale that there was not the slightest trace of blood. It gave people a very strange and even frightening feeling. It was this hand, 1 index finger and 1 fingertip, that gently touched Long Hao-Chen's conjoined spiritual attack. The crisscross slash was an attack that was comparable to the full attack of a divine artifact. With this crisscross slash, Long Hao-Chen had killed the Cyan Goblin riding demon-type Gale and the Insight Demon Godcrosser's parasitic body. However, at this moment, such a powerful attack was blocked by the white, jade-like finger. A layer of dark blue light spread from her fingers, causing her slender figure to tremble slightly. Her incantation stopped just like that. Although Long Hao-Chen's attack did not cause her any harm, it still interrupted her incantation. "It's you creatures from the other world again." A cold voice rang in the hearts of Long Hao-Chen and his companions. It was not a verbal communication, but Long Hao-Chen and his companions could clearly feel the enemy's intention. At this moment, Long Hao-Chen was the most shocked. Although he had interrupted the enemy's incantation, it was just a finger. Just a finger was enough to block his strongest attack. Even with the 2 epic-grade, godly swords, coupled with his spiritual power and pure light elements, he had only managed to interrupt the enemy's incantation. What kind of strength was this? You have Austin and Griffin's aura on you. No wonder you could stop my incantation. It seems that you were the one who guided it to another plane. You really have guts. I will kill you first, and then I will kill it. The cold voice was filled with anger, but it gave off a strange feeling of gentleness. If Long Hao-Chen had stayed in this world for a while longer when Hao Yue was evolving his third head, he would have recognized the enemy in front of him who was shrouded in a large cloak. It was one of the most powerful undead lords in this world, the Lich King. The Lich King pointed the bone staff in his hand at Long Hao-Chen, and a small purple bubble flew out and went straight for Long Hao-Chen. At the same time, the dark purple light in the sky behind the Lich King became more intense, and in an instant, it enveloped Long Hao-Chen and his companions. The huge pressure seemed to be overwhelming, and the strong, dark aura seemed to be able to oppress Long Hao-Chen and his companions to death. After all, this was not a plane that belonged to Long Hao-Chen, and he could not even borrow the power of the Goddess of Light. However, as a favor to God, he had already created countless miracles, so how could he be timid in front of the Lich King? Long Hao-Chen suddenly put away the 2 swords in his hands, and at the same time, he let out a long roar towards the sky. A strong golden flame instantly surged out of his body, and a strong light like the sun suddenly illuminated the sky with a golden color. An incomparably holy aura bloomed from Long Houchen's body, and no matter how strong the dark purple light was, it could not penetrate the golden light. The holy light, spiritual power, was the greatest nemesis of the undead. Although Long Houchen could not be replenished by the light's spiritual power in this world, it also meant that the light element in this world was precious and special. No matter how strong the Lich King was, she was still an undead, and in the face of such pure light elements, she could only be defeated. Her powerful domain could not do anything to Long Houchen. At this time, the purple bubble had also hid in front of Long Houchen. In the face of this strange and powerful bubble, Long Houchen would not be careless. A colorful golden light suddenly bloomed, and a large light spread out with his body as the core. It was the Guardian Knight's skill, Shield Wall. Chi-Chi. A series of strange sounds rang from the Sun Moon Divine Snail Shield. Through the shield, Long Houchen could also be shocked by the horrible corrosive power of the purple bubble. Chapter 202. However, just like how the Lich King's domain was restrained by Long Houchen, the shield in Long Houchen's hands, the Sun Moon Divine Snail, had a strong restraining effect on all undead and dark magic. The impact of the purple bubbles was not strong, relying on the powerful corrosive power of darkness. At this time, in front of the Sun Moon Divine Snail, they could only silently wither away. Being able to block the opponent's attack made Long Houchen heave a sigh of relief. Although the Lich King was strong, his attributes seemed to be restrained by him. Moreover, under the effects of a series of enhancements and his companion's spiritual enhancement, Long Houchen's current cultivation had also risen to a rather terrifying level. His companions were all Type 7 powerhouses with a spiritual energy of more than 10,000. 5 Type 7 powerhouses provided him with more than 60,000 spiritual energy. In addition to his own spiritual energy, even without the Golden Foundation armor, he was already a Type 9 powerhouse. Coupled with the replenishment from the armor, his overall spiritual energy was now more than 150,000. Furthermore, he was fully equipped with epic grade and above equipment. It would not be that easy for the Lich King to kill him. With a cold snort, the Lich King started chanting the same strange incantation as before. One after another, purple Cheongsam flew out from her staff. These bubbles were of different sizes, and as they flew towards Long Houchen, they left a dark, distorted trail in the sky. As they flew, they actually broke through space. Furthermore, this was done by relying on the corrosive power. From this, it could be seen how terrifying the power of these bubbles was. A golden light flashed in Long Houchen's eyes. Although he relied on the Sun Moon Divine Snail Shield to block the opponent's attack, the powerful corrosive power of the bubbles was also rapidly consuming his spiritual energy. If this continued, he would not be able to hold on for long. Yiting, Long Houchen shouted. He and Yiting's minds were linked. Yiting was his most powerful spiritual stove. She had successively absorbed the saint's spiritual stove and a large amount of various kinds of energy. The current her, in terms of her degree of evolution, even Long Houchen did not know how strong she was. The Lich King's strength was unfathomable, with a conservative estimate of 300,000 spiritual energy. Furthermore, in this plane, her strength must have been greatly enhanced. Long Houchen did not know how long Hao Yue would need. If they continued to passively take a beating, they would only be waiting for death. He had to find a way to deal with the opponent. Yiting had been floating beside Long Houchen. Hearing his call, Yiting raised the golden staff in her hand. A golden light shot out from the staff in her hand, heading straight for the Lich King. When the golden light shot out, Yiting's chest also flashed with a golden light, and a small golden cauldron appeared in front of her chest. The Lich King stretched out his left hand and pointed at the golden light in the air. Strangely, the golden light was not affected by her finger and still fell on the Lich King. It could be seen that the golden light was like a rope coiling around the Lich King's waist. Then it tightened and pulled her towards Long Houchen. This is, not to mention the Lich King. Even Long Houchen's companions did not know what ability Yiting used. She actually ignored the opponent's defense and completed the entanglement and pulling. Even with the Lich King's strength, he seemed to be unable to resist. Success! Long Houchen was overjoyed. An intense, seven-colored golden light suddenly burst out from the sun-moon divine snail shield, smashing the purple bubbles in the air. The aria of the goddess of light returned to his right hand. In an instant, Long Houchen seemed to have completely fused with the divine sword. The swift and fierce sword intent caused the air around him to distort, and an ear-piercing whistle resounded through the sky. The divine sword flashed with a dazzling orange radiance and went straight for the Lich King. It turned out that after the brief exchange with the Lich King, Long Houchen already felt that this enemy should be a necromancer similar to human magicians. Her magic was indeed powerful, so powerful that Long Houchen had never seen anything like it in his life. Relying on the divine artifact Sun-Moon Divine Snail Shield and his spiritual energy of more than 150,000, it was very difficult to resist. However, since her magic was so powerful, her physical strength naturally would not be too strong. Directly attacking her body might be able to play a decisive role. The golden light shot out from Yuting's staff was the formidable ability of the Saint's spiritual stove after its evolution. After absorbing the gem left behind by the demon god of Insight Crosser, the Saint's spiritual stove underwent a mutation. Although it did not increase the range of the Saint's spiritual stove's effect, nor did it produce the Insight spirit guiding technique that Long Houchen had imagined, an extremely special additional attribute appeared. It was precisely this additional attribute that was enough to make the Saint's spiritual stove enter the power of a type of spiritual stove. Of course, this ability was now directly attributed to Yuting, because the Saint's spiritual stove was originally a part of her. This additional attribute was the absolute validity. The absolute validity was only effective under the Saint's spiritual stove's traction ability. In other words, as long as Yuting launched the traction ability, no matter how powerful the opponent was, they would definitely be successfully pulled in front of Long Houchen. The traction range was only 100 meters. In other words, once the opponent entered within 100 meters of Yuting, the traction would be complete. Compared to the Insight's soul guiding technique, this absolutely effective attraction was still a far cry. However, one must never forget that the Insight spirit guiding technique was not guaranteed to succeed. There were also many limitations. Although the traction range was very limited, it was absolutely valid. Within a range of 100 meters, this was simply comparable to the ability of a divine tool. Of course, the premise was that Long Houchen was certain to be able to defeat the opponent. Moreover, after the Saint's spiritual stove's evolution, it could only be used 3 times a day. The Lich King's ice-cold thought emerged in Long Houchen's mind. In your dreams. Did Long Houchen's godly sword cut through? It really did. However, what he cut through was a deep purple mist. When the Lich King was pulled in front of Long Houchen, the traction effect of the Saint's spiritual stove disappeared. That sword brimming with swift and fierce sword intent did not have any real effect. The Lich King unexpectedly turned into a thick mist, allowing the aria of the goddess of light to pass through that mist. Mist? No, this enemy was directly in existence similar to a vengeful spirit. Long Houchen was shocked and almost subconsciously made a reaction. A strong 7-colored golden light suddenly shot out from the sun-moon divine snail shield and fell on the Lich King's mist. Suddenly, a mournful scream sounded. The purple-black mist quickly floated far away for thousands of meters, and once again condensed into the Lich King's appearance. However, her body in the air was obviously somewhat unstable. She was obviously injured. The divine tool, transformed from the starlight divine beast, had the purest light attribute. That's right, the Lich King, without a physical body, was immune to any physical attack. However, the illumination of light was enough to hurt her. Of course, this also needed to be powerful enough. The Sun-Moon Divine Snail Shield obviously had this kind of ability. The intense, 7-colored golden light reverberated in the air. Long Houchen also had the time to breathe a sigh of relief. In the end, the opponent was still injured. He did not chase after her. Protecting Hao Yue was the most important thing. It seems that I have underestimated you. The Lich King's voice became even colder, and there was a hint of extreme anger in the coldness. She did not use her full strength against Long Haochen because she could feel the huge gap between her and the enemy in front of her. She wanted to save more strength to deal with Hao Yue. Austin and Griffin were not that easy to destroy. Even an existence like the Lich King did not have absolute confidence in dealing with the Lich King, who had evolved to 6 heads. However, she did not expect Long Haochen to be so difficult to deal with. With his pure light spiritual power and a divine tool like the Sun Moon Divine Snail Shield, he forcefully stalled the Lich King. At this moment, the light of the purple hexagram formed by the bright moon in the sky had begun to dim, but its body was shining brighter and brighter. It looked more like a giant dragon than a lizard. His 6 big heads had also become more like dragon heads. Coupled with his strong body and the wings that had transformed into the form of dragon wings, his aura began to become stronger. It would not take long for his evolution to be completed. Even though the Lich King had a powerful cultivation base, she could not help but panic when she sensed the resentment in Hao Yue's eyes. Having experienced the earth-shattering battle back then, she knew how powerful Austin and Griffin were. He must not be allowed to complete his evolution and escape again. Otherwise, she did not know if she could restrain him the next time. At the thought of this, the Lich King let out a shriek. Countless dark purple light spheres appeared in the sky. Each of these light spheres was more than a meter in diameter, and they flew straight at Long Haochen and the others like a purple meteor shower. At the same time, they flew towards Hao Yue and his purple hexagram. The Lich King pointed her staff forward and chanted a series of incantations. Cracks began to appear in the sky, and a purplish-black haze rose from her body. After the purplish-black haze rose, the Lich King's aura became weaker. She had indeed been injured by the Sun Moon Divine Snail's colorful golden light. She had underestimated Long Haochen and underestimated this favored one. At this moment, the Lich King had unleashed her full strength. Long Haochen dared not delay. He flew back with his companions and stood in front of Hao Yue. He was alone, so he could not care about the purple hexagram in the sky. All he could do now was to protect Hao Yue's body. The colorful golden light blossomed again, and the shield wall reappeared. At the same time, Long Haochen chanted an incantation together with Yiting. Light prayer. He did not know what kind of powerful skill the Lich King would cast next, but it was definitely the right choice to prepare a light prayer. The purple light balls were much stronger than the previous bubbles. Not only were they highly corrosive, but they also had a terrifying impact. After Long Haochen blocked dozens of them, he and his companions continued to retreat with the defensive power of the Sun Moon Divine Snail Shield. The spiritual power of the body enhancement skill was decreasing at a terrifying speed. If this continued, Long Haochen would not be able to complete the light prayer spell. At this moment, a ray of purple light shot down from the hexagram in the sky and landed on Long Haochen's body. In an instant, Long Haochen felt the blood in his body surge, and an indescribable power suddenly burst out from his body. This power had nothing to do with his spiritual energy and caused his skin to completely turn purplish gold. His retreating footsteps also came to an abrupt halt as he forcibly maintained the shield wall in front of him. This strange power gave Long Haochen the feeling that it was an external spiritual power, an extreme external spiritual power. The strange purplish gold color even dyed the Sun Moon Divine Snail Shield, as if it had added a protective layer to this artifact shield. The purple light balls launched by the Lich King bombarded the hexagram in the sky, but to no avail. The hexagram emitted layers of dense purple light that completely dissolved the purple light balls. However, at this moment, a deafening roar sounded in the sky. Huge figures emerged from the cracks that were torn by the Lich King. Bone dragons, which were made of pale bones and had dark purple flames dancing in their eye sockets, emerged from the cracks and pounced on Long Haochen and Hao Yue. That was over 100 bone dragons. They were one of the ultimate undead creatures, the bone dragons. There was a certain gap between ordinary bone dragons and real dragons, but every bone dragon was an undead powerhouse at the peak of the 8th rank. They had powerful spiritual power and physical strength. In Long Houchen's world, perhaps only the Demon Emperor's heaven-defying demon dragon army could contend against hundreds of bone dragons that appeared out of nowhere. Long Houchen and his companions couldn't help but turn pale. An even more terrifying scene was yet to come. The Lich King's purplish-black domain silently covered the bone dragons, causing their bones to turn purplish-black. The bone dragons that were all at the peak of the 8th rank actually broke through to the 9th rank, just like that. In an instant, the sky was covered by clouds. They pounced on Long Houchen and the rest. After completing this terrifying summoning, the Lich King was still chanting her incantation. She flew back into the sky and raised her staff high in the face of Hao Yue's purple hexagram. It seemed that the purpose of so many terrifying and powerful bone dragons was to make it impossible for Long Houchen and the rest to stop her incantation. At this instant, Long Houchen's mind raced, and he instantly made a decision. Under the surprised gaze of his companions, he took the initiative to end the body enhancement, turned around quickly, and instantly struck out 5 palms. Each palm brought with it a golden light, sending Kai, Wang Yuanyuan, Lin Exant, Zhang Fangfang, Han Yu, and the evil eye lord back to the Tower of Eternity. At this moment, the bone dragons had already begun to pounce. Meanwhile, Long Houchen strangely no longer cared about Hao Yue. He suddenly soared up, the 4 wings on his back bursting with dazzling golden light. Lightspeed flash. He flew up toward the bone dragons, sticking closely to the 6 purple light pillars released by Hao Yue. Lightspeed flash was extremely fast. In almost a flash, he was already high in the sky, coming face to face with the bone dragons. After losing the enhancement from the body enhancement, Long Houchen's power had been greatly reduced, falling to the level 9. However, he displayed his flying skills to the extreme. One could clearly see that he was twisting and turning in mid-air, not sparing any spiritual energy to fully display light speed flash, forcibly breaking through the gaps between the bone dragons. After all, these bone dragons had just been summoned, so they were slightly sluggish as they pounced. Faced with Long Houchen's breakthrough, the few bone dragons closest to him immediately launched attacks, but most of them were dodged by Long Houchen. Only one bone dragon's claw slammed onto the Sun Moon Divine Snail Shield. Although the bone dragons had been elevated to the level 9 level with the help of the Lich King's domain, the defense of the level 8 Long Houchen and the Sun Moon Divine Snail Shield was not so easily broken. Moreover, with the addition of a layer of purplish gold on his body, his external spiritual energy was extraordinarily strong. He actually shook the bone dragon to the side, and his figure flashed again, rising higher into the sky. A golden belt of light flashed again, entangling the Lich King without any fancy moves. Traction. The moment Long Houchen activated Light Speed Flash, Yiting attached herself to him from behind. After a series of twisting and turning in Long Houchen's direction, he was finally within 100 meters of the Lich King. The aria of the Goddess of Light's orange-red radiance appeared again, along with the sword intent of the body and sword fusion. At the same time, the Sun Moon Divine Snail Shield emitted the strongest 7-colored golden light. At this moment, Long Houchen's eyes were shining, but he was extremely calm and steady. The Bone Dragon army was terrifying, but the Lich King was even more terrifying. What he had to do was to stop the Lich King's incantation. Hao Yue was evolving and couldn't communicate with him, but Long Houchen could feel the changes in his emotions. When the Bone Dragon army appeared, Hao Yue's emotions didn't fluctuate at all, but when the Lich King appeared in front of the hexagram and began to chant again, Hao Yue's emotions fluctuated extremely violently. Weighing the pros and cons, Long Houchen immediately made an accurate judgment. He first teleported his partners away to ensure their safety. The Lich King let out an angry scream when she was dragged to Long Houchen again. She never expected Long Houchen to make such a judgment and have the ability to break out of the Bone Dragon army's encirclement. At this moment, at least 4 bone dragons were chasing behind Long Houchen and attacking him. However, the Lich King's incantation was ultimately interrupted. Boom! A circle of intense, purplish-black light exploded around Long Houchen's body. His sword intent was forcibly blown apart. The terrifying explosive force caused Long Houchen to spit out a mouthful of blood. However, at the same time, he completed the defense of the shield wall. The Sun Moon Divine Snail Shield that was shining with colorful golden light was extremely sturdy. At that moment, the Sun Moon Divine Snail Shield not only withstood the Lich King's magical bombardment, but also withstood the attacks of the 4 bone dragons. With a layer of purplish gold on his body and the powerful defense of the Sun Moon Divine Snail Shield, Long Houchen managed to withstand the attacks. However, at this moment, he was also in a desperate situation. He was surrounded by 4 bone dragons and the Lich King, who was extremely powerful in necromagic. He had no way out now. It was also at this moment that a deafening roar sounded from below. A strange scene appeared. There were over 100 bone dragons. After hearing this roar, their bodies actually all became sluggish. Even the Lich King's body froze. In the sky, the huge purple hexagram exploded, and a huge purple halo instantly spread out, enveloping the entire battlefield. The dancing flames in the eye sockets of each bone dragon became extremely intense, giving people the feeling that they could be extinguished at any time. They curled up their bodies with all their might and did their best to protect their soul flames. From the looks of it, it was extremely difficult for them to even protect themselves, let alone attack. With a flash of purplish gold light, Long Houchen disappeared into thin air from the encirclement just like that. When he reappeared, he had already landed on Hao Yue's back. Hao Yue, who had transformed into a dragon, had already completed his evolution. That roar was made by his 6 big heads at the same time. Little light, little fire, little green, little blue, little purple, and little yellow, who had just been born and had a split tomato horn on his head. The 6 big heads radiated with power. After the evolution, Hao Yue's spiritual power aura was only around the 8th rank of a human expert, but the layer of purple light emitted from his body caused the huge bone dragon legion and even the Lich King to feel fear. 6 pairs of cold eyes focused on the Lich King. The Lich King let out another scream, and the cloak on her body actually dissipated into a black fog, revealing her true form. She had a perfect female body, and her delicate body was completely naked, but she had a skull on her head. She frantically waved her bone staff downwards. Rays of intense purplish-black light bombarded Hao Yue. Roar! With another roar, the intense purple light rippled again, and the Lich King's attack instantly vanished in a thin air in front of the purple light. Hao Yue flapped her huge wings and brazenly flew up with Long Houchen, smashing into a bone dragon that was desperately protecting its soul flames. In the next instant, with a flash of golden light, she and Long Houchen had already disappeared into the dark night sky. No, the Lich King roared frantically. Her rage caused all the bone dragons to tremble. However, she still failed and could only watch helplessly as Hao Yue completed another evolution. She now had a 6th head. Her failure wasn't because she wasn't strong enough. In the face of the purple aura emitted by Hao Yue, she couldn't even unleash 50% of her strength. In the end, when she summoned the Bone Dragon Legion, she had to use all her strength to resist the fear in her heart. Otherwise, how could Long Houchen and the others stop this powerful undead monarch? Even in the world that Hao Yue came from, the Lich King's cultivation was ranked among the top few. After the extreme rage, an indescribable chill spread in the Lich King's heart. She couldn't describe the feeling in her heart at this moment, but she faintly felt that the incomparably terrifying Austin and Griffin seemed to have returned. Before Hao Yue and Long Houchen left, the moment when the 6 pairs of purple eyes stared at her had been deeply imprinted in her memory. The fear that came from the depths of her soul, even made the Lich King detonate her cloak. However, no matter what, she failed. Do I still have one more chance or two? The Lich King wasn't sure herself. The six-headed Haiyue already had such a strong suppression effect on her aura. In that case, if she wanted to find him again, she would have to wait for him to evolve again. However, after evolving again, could she still control him? The deep sense of helplessness gradually turned into extreme fear, and the Lich King let out another scream. Tower of Eternity. When Long Houchen and Haiyue returned, Long Houchen could only feel that his back was drenched in cold sweat. The battle just now was too dangerous. If it wasn't for Haiyue's help, he would have died in the battle. In any case, he couldn't abandon Haiyue and teleport back to the Tower of Eternity by himself. What kind of existence was that undead creature? Her undead magic was very different from that of the undead demon god Samakina, but it was more direct and more terrifying. Especially the scene of summoning hundreds of bone dragons at the end. It was too shocking. If it wasn't for Haiyue who deterred those bone dragons, he was afraid that he would have been torn apart. However, on the other hand, such a terrifying undead creature had obvious fear towards Haiyue and even suppressed its strength because of Haiyue's aura. It was conceivable that Haiyue's ancestors or previous life had left her with many painful memories. Haiyue, how far will you evolve in the future? Looking at Haiyue's 6 big heads and its amethyst-like scales, Long Houchen gently touched it. Haiyue's 6 big heads immediately came over, especially the new Earth big head, Goldie, who rubbed against him. In front of Long Houchen, Haiyue's previous coercion was not there at all, and it was still like a child. However, Haiyue's evolution was also very significant for Long Houchen. His internal spiritual power increased by about 3,000, and more importantly, the changes in his external spiritual power. Now that he calmed down, Long Houchen carefully felt it. He found that there seemed to be a powerful force in his blood. This force was very similar to Haiyue's aura, and it should be the layer of purple gold that appeared on his body before. This force was merging with his body and gradually became a part of his external spiritual power. Due to the blood contract between him and Haiyue, the speed at which Haiyue's power fused with his body was very fast. According to Long Houchen's estimation, the whole process of merging would be completed in less than 10 days. By that time, he himself was not sure how much his external spiritual power would be strengthened. However, the improvement of his external spiritual power would probably be in the tens of thousands. More importantly, the external spiritual power that Haiyue helped him to improve seemed to have something in common with his internal spiritual power. After Haiyue and Long Houchen made out, he crawled on the floor of the Tower of Eternity and fell into a deep sleep. He was obviously very tired. This evolution also consumed a lot of his energy. Long Houchen's companions didn't know what kind of thrill he and Haiyue experienced at the end. After all, they only teleported back for 10 seconds, and Long Houchen and Haiyue teleported back together. How could they know that if it wasn't for Long Houchen's kindness to help Haiyue fight for the last few seconds and stop the Lich King's last attack that might threaten Haiyue, they probably wouldn't have been able to return. Haiyue fell into a deep sleep, and they all came to Long Houchen's side. Hanyu said with some worry, "Leader, Haiyue's evolution seems to be getting more and more difficult. The power of that undead creature just now is comparable to the top 10 demon gods, or even stronger. I'm afraid the opponent we're going to face next time will be even more powerful." Lin Xin said, "The time it takes for Haiyue to evolve is getting longer and longer. Maybe the next evolution will take a few years. When that time comes, don't tell me we won't be able to help him resist strong enemies. Boss is already an 8th rank knight, and in a few years, he might even reach the 9th rank." Wang Yuanyuan giggled and said, "I didn't expect you to be such an optimist. Boss, Haiyue has also completed his evolution. Can we go look for Inger now?" Long Houchen nodded slightly and said, "It's time to meet up with them. However, after careful consideration these few days, I've decided that we'll go to the Soul Temple's Myriad Beast Pass and the Temple of the Priest Southern Pass, and try not to fight. Especially me, I won't participate in the battle against the demons anymore." Hearing what he said, his companions were all stunned. One must know that as demon hunters, their most fundamental task was to fight against the demons. Long Houchin said, "Since I finished my seclusion, I've fought against the demons in Dragon Resisting Pass, Exorcist Pass, Jialing Pass, and the Southeast Stronghold. I performed in almost every stronghold. Moreover, my performance was a bit too outstanding. In Dragon Resisting Pass, because of the Tower of Eternity, I seriously injured the demon god Samakina. In Exorcist Pass, I helped Shun Yu, a great-grandfather, kill the flaming lion demon and Luo Xian, and together with Kair, killed the green goblin riding demon god Air. In Jialing Pass, I also relied on light prayer to temporarily resist the demon god Marbus's super forbidden spell, buying time for the defense of Jialing Pass. Here, I once again killed the demon god Clauzel. 3 demon gods have died because of me. Demons aren't fools, and my golden foundation armor is too conspicuous. They must have noticed me and even guessed something. Moreover, every time I appear on the battlefield, the number of companions around me increases. I've concealed my appearance, but your appearance is seen by the demons. As long as someone observant analyzes it, the demons can easily guess that I've appeared. If the demon emperor confirms his guess, then he's likely to lead the heaven-defying demon dragon clan, moon devils, and star demons to invade. And this is the last thing I want to see right now. The demons will discover my existence sooner or later, but I hope that it'll be among the demons. This way, we won't implicate the 6 strongholds. Therefore, we should try not to make any more moves and keep a low profile until we meet up with Inger and Sima and sneak into the demons' territory." After listening to Long Houchin's analysis, Zhang Fangfang and Han Yu immediately expressed their support, and the others also understood. That's right. Now is not the time to show off. Although they had killed a few Fiend Celestials, they were relatively low-ranked opponents. Their strength was not considered too terrifying. The demon god crown hasn't escaped, so these demon gods won't appear for the time being. However, as long as their demon god pillars are still there, the position of demon god will be passed down. Therefore, the most important thing for them is to sneak into the demon's territory and destroy the demon god pillars as much as possible. At that time, although they will be extremely majestic in the demon's territory, the Temple League will be more stable. They only have a few people, and no matter how strong the demons are, it won't be easy to find them in such a huge territory. Myriad Beast Pass, Soul Temple. Chunning stood there blankly, and her whole person seemed to be a little sluggish. The Soul Saint garment, with 108 spiritual pills and countless silver patterns embroidered with demon beasts, emitted gentle spiritual power fluctuations. And in front of her sat 2 old men. One of them was her grandmother, Sanshui Popo, and the other was even more incredible. He was the current Soul Temple Master, and also Chunning Er's grandfather, the psychic Chenhongba. That's how it is. You have to restrain your grief. The possibility of his survival is very, very low. No, it can't be. He must still be alive. He must still be alive. Chunning suddenly shouted, and tears uncontrollably flowed down her cheeks. She was still holding a letter in her hand, but at that moment, her body was trembling uncontrollably. Her emotions were almost out of control. San Shui Popo sighed and said, "Child, we have been fighting against the demons for so many years and have experienced too many parting of life and death. Think about it. This hatred, we will unceasingly demand it from the demons." "No, grandmother, I want to go find him." Chunning suddenly raised her head, and her eyes emitted an extremely resolute light. "Nonsense!" Chun Hongba shouted loudly, and his imposing aura immediately intimidated Chun Ing. "Are you still a 3-year-old child? Don't tell me you don't know the consequences of looking for him by yourself? The moment you inherited the Soul Saint garment, your life no longer belonged to you alone." Chunning stubbornly said, "I can take off the Soul Saint garment." "Nonsense." Chen Hongba suddenly stood up. His stature couldn't be considered tall, but it had a kind of indescribable grandeur. "Apart from being the Soul Saintess, you are also my Chun Hongba's only granddaughter. Have you ever thought about us? If something happened to you, wouldn't your grandmother and I go crazy? Hearing these words, Chun Ing-er's stubbornness finally softened. She suddenly rushed forward a few steps, threw herself into Sanshui Popo's embrace, and burst into tears. Looking at his bitterly crying granddaughter, Chun Hongba helplessly shook his head. You little girl, your temper is just too stubborn. You obviously like him, but you just have to pretend to be disdainful. Now you're suffering. While Sanshui Popo was comforting her granddaughter, she unhappily glared at Chun Hongba. You still have the nerve to say that? Isn't it just like you old fart? I still remember the way you behaved when you were chasing me at that time. You would rather die than lose face and suffer. The previously overbearing Soul Temple master was helpless in front of his wife and resentfully sat down. After pondering for a moment, he said in a deep voice, We, the Soul Temple, are all summoners. Investigating this kind of thing is the worst. Ing-er, you must remain calm. Grandfather immediately reported to the Holy Alliance and asked the Holy Alliance to dispatch monster hunters to look for him. If possible, rescue him. Chapter 203. Hearing her grandfather's words, Chun Ing-er raised her head and said with tears in her eyes, But now, the monster hunters are either helping to defend the city or fighting with the demons in the hinterland. How can there be strong enough monster hunters to find him? Moreover, who knows how long it will take for the Holy Alliance to react when you write a letter to them? Chun Hongba smiled bitterly. What can we do? I will write a letter to the Exorcist Mountain Pass and ask them to send some assassins. This was the only way out of desperation. Ing-er, don't you know how slim the chances of him surviving are? Chun Ing-er pouted. Just as she was about to cry again, a respectful voice came from outside. Temple Master, the acting Holy Knight of Knights Templars is here to pay a visit. Acting Holy Knight? Although Chun Hongba was upset about Chun Ing-er's matter, he didn't dare to be negligent when he heard the words acting Holy Knight. Knights Templars was the head of the 6 temples. Although the acting Holy Knight's strength might not be among the best in Knights Templars, his power was definitely among the top, even surpassing some deputy temple masters who didn't have much power. Invite him in, Chun Hongba said immediately. Chun Ing-er stopped crying and said to Chun Hongba eagerly, Grandfather, this acting Holy Knight is just in time. Ask him to send a few Holy Knights to help find him. Chun Hongba said in a deep voice, Child, calm down. Isn't Grandfather worried? He is my grandson-in-law. Let me first meet this acting Paladin Chief before we talk. The Holy Knight of Knights Templars has changed. It seems that Han Q will stay with the Holy Alliance. You and your grandmother can wait in the inner room for a while. Chun Ing-er answered in a wrong tone and helped her grandmother into the inner room. This was Chun Hongba's office, as well as his and Sanshui Popo's residence. The room was very large. Outside was a large living room, and inside was a bedroom and a cultivation room. Soon, sonorous footsteps were heard from outside, and the voice of the person who had reported earlier sounded again. Lord Temple Master, the acting Holy Knight has arrived. Please come in. Chun Hongba's expression had already returned to normal. Along with the sonorous footsteps, a tall and burly knight wearing a fine gold base armor walked in from outside. Chun Hongba was surprised to see that not only was this stand-in Holy Knight dressed in military attire, but he didn't even remove his mask. This was not a battlefield. The battle situation in the Soul Temple was stable. This acting Holy Knight elder actually came to see him dressed like this. It was really impolite. Acting Holy Knight of Knights Templars, Elder Jingji number 12, greets Temple Master Chun. Because of some inconvenience, I didn't remove my mask. Please forgive me, Temple Master. A clear voice came from within the armor. So young? This was Chun Hongba's first reaction. Before he could speak, a cry of alarm came from inside. It was Chun Ing-er's voice. In the next moment, along with a fragrant wind, Chun Ing-er, who was wearing the Soul Saint garment, rushed out from inside like the wind. Even Sanshui Popo couldn't stop her. You are. Chun Ing-er came in front of the knight on a golden pedestal and asked with a trembling voice. Seeing her, The knight on a golden pedestal also became strangely excited. Inger, you're here too. That's great. It saves me the trouble of looking for you. While speaking, the knight on a golden pedestal raised his hand and took off his mask, revealing an extremely young and extremely handsome face. Wasn't Long Houchen? Chun Inger and Long Houchen had been partners for several years. She was very familiar with his voice. Therefore, when Long Houchen opened his mouth, she recognized it. Only then did she recklessly rush out of the room. Boss! As if she had seen a relative. The moment the word boss came out, Chun Inger threw herself into Long Houchen's embrace and burst into tears. Chun Hongbao was dumbstruck as he watched from the side. He didn't understand how this magic trick had changed. Even if this Soul Temple's temple master, a rank 9 psychic with outstanding intelligence, he still couldn't understand the situation in front of him. Sanshui Popo also walked out of the room and arrived in front of Chun Hongbao. When she saw Long Houchen, her shock wasn't any less than Chun Inger's. She whispered in Chun Hongbao's ear, "This young man is Long Houchen. Why is he here?" And he even became the acting Holy Knight leader. Who is Long Houchen? Chun Hongbao only felt that this name was somewhat familiar, but he couldn't think of who this name belonged to. Sanshui Popo knew Long Houchen during the Monster Hunters trials. The current Long Houchen was a lot taller than before. He also looked a lot more mature and handsome. If it wasn't for Chun Inger calling him boss, she really wouldn't have dared to recognize him. Are you stupid? He's that genius youngster from the Knights Templars. Inger is the leader of their Monster Hunters team, the one who destroyed the Snake Demon God and Amari Demon God Pillar. Hearing Sanshui Popo say this, Chun Hongbao reacted. So the young man in front of him was the #1 genius in the history of the Knights Templars, the Scion of Light, Long Houchen. Long Houchen comforted Chun Inger while apologetically bowing to the two elders again. Sanshui Popo slowly walked forward. She smiled and nodded to Long Houchen, then pulled Chun Inger out of his embrace. Although Chun Inger and Long Houchen used to be a team of monster hunters, in Sanshui Popo's eyes, her granddaughter wasn't the slightest bit inferior to this Scion of Light. But in Sanshui Popo's eyes, her granddaughter wasn't the least bit inferior to this Scion of Light. What's more, Chun Inger had a fiancé. If she was too close to Long Houchen like this, it wouldn't be good if it was spread out. Boss, you have to save him. Although Chun Inger was pulled away by her grandmother, she still couldn't help but say. Long Houchen stared blankly. At the side, Sanshui Popo scolded. You girl, why can't you calm down a bit? This acting Saint Knight leader is here to see your grandfather. Chun Inger looked at Long Houchen with grievance and said, Boss, I'll tell you later. You have to help me. Long Houchen looked at her pretty face covered in tears and couldn't help but feel pain in his heart. He nodded without hesitation. Although Chun Inger was older than him, when they were in the same team, he had always treated Chun Inger as a younger sister. Chun Inger had a straightforward temperament. Although she was the weakest, no matter what kind of danger she faced, she wouldn't be timid. This was the first time Long Houchen had seen her cry so bitterly and lose control of herself. Chun Hongbao had been looking at Long Houchen with a slightly puzzled gaze. Now that Chun Inger had calmed down, he slowly said, Saint Knight leader, Inger has been rude. Please don't take offense. Are you the Saint Knight leader who has just been promoted? Long Houchen naturally understood this psychic's meaning. He immediately took out his command tablet and his grandfather's letter and handed it over. After Chun Hongbao read Long Tianin's letter, his face revealed a somewhat regretful expression. He indifferently said, I understand Brother Tianin's meaning. Saint Knight leader can stay here with us for the time being. Long Houchen said, Temple leader Chun, we may not be able to stay here for long. After leaving here, we still have to continue to the Temple of the Priests to rendezvous with our last companion. Chun Hongbao's eyes slightly flickered. He said, Saint Knight leader, I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you. Since your Monster Hunters team has already been disbanded, I don't intend to let Inger rejoin the Monster Hunters team. She must stay in the temple. Long Houchen was gobsmacked. Chun Inger was the same. This was the first time Long Houchen had encountered such a situation since he came out of seclusion and rendezvoused with his companions. Chun Hongba unexpectedly didn't agree to let Chen Inger return to the team. Just as Chun Inger was about to open her mouth, she was held down by Sanshui Popo. She even used her spiritual power to seal her ability to speak. She could only anxiously look at her grandfather and Long Haochen. Chun Hongba said, Saint Knight leader can represent the Knights Templars. I won't hide it anymore. Inger's innate internal spiritual power is above 90. She is our soul temple's soul saintess. Moreover, she is the first genius in the history of the soul temple to inherit the soul saint garment. Therefore, she must stay in the temple. In the near future, she will inherit my mantle and become the next temple leader of the soul temple. Therefore, her identity is rather special. She is no longer suitable to become a demon hunter and take risks. Hearing Chun Hongba's words, Long Haochen was silent. He turned his head to look at Chun Inger. Although Chun Inger was restrained by her grandmother, her anxious eyes already told Long Haochen a lot of things. Long Haochen said, Temple leader Chun, why don't you listen to Inger's own opinion? If she is unwilling to become a demon hunter, I won't force her. However, you also know that a team of monster hunters is made up of various professions. If we don't have Inger, we won't be a complete monster hunters team. Chun Hongba indifferently said, This is simple. There are many young experts in our soul temple. Let Saint Knight leader choose one. I will report to the Holy Alliance and make an exception to let your team change members. Even Sanshui Popo said that he was stubborn. One could imagine the temper of this temple leader of the soul temple. As long as he decided on something, he would rarely change his mind. Long Haochen helplessly looked at Chun Inger. However, he saw that the expression in her eyes had changed even more intensely. She was so anxious that tears had already flowed out. Temple leader Chun, please reconsider. As the temple leader of the Soul Temple, you have no right to order demon hunters. Chun Hongba's expression froze. Saint Knight leader, please remember your status. You still don't have the qualifications to speak to me like this. You can leave. Expulsion order. Compared to Magic Temple's temple leader Li Zhengji, this temple leader Chen's attitude towards Long Haochen was much worse. Of course, the most important reason was because of his relationship with Chun Inger. Long Haochen frowned slightly and said, No, you are wrong. I believe that I have the qualifications to speak to you. Apart from Saint Knight leader, I also have the title of Monster Hunters. Chun Hongba blanked. Young man, watch your words. Not everything can be used as a flag. How old are you? What is your cultivation? Why do you have the title of Monster Hunters? The title that Long Haochen mentioned naturally meant the top title Monster Hunters. That was the supreme glory of Monster Hunters. It was also the highest position among all the Monster Hunters. The leader of the titled Monster Hunters definitely had the same position as the temple leaders of the major temple. Long Haochen said calmly, If I remember correctly, according to the rules of the Alliance, there's a situation where one can obtain the title of Monster Hunters before their cultivation is up to par. This situation means that one has made sufficient contributions to the Alliance. Chun Hongba said coldly, Are you referring to your destruction of the snake, demon, god, Andamari's demon god pillar? That's right, this achievement can indeed give you such an honor. However, the destruction of Andamari's demon god pillar is only your side of the story. The Alliance has yet to verify it. You gave yourself the title of Monster Hunters without authorization. Isn't that a little too arrogant? Long Haochen shook his head and said, No, I'm not referring to this contribution. The rules of Monster Hunters do not stipulate that destroying a demon god pillar can obtain a title. However, there is such a rule in the rules of Monster Hunters. If a team of Monster Hunters kills 3 or more demon gods, they are qualified to obtain a title in advance. Chun Hongba was shocked. You mean you've already killed 3 or more demon gods? Long Haochen stepped on the ground with his right foot. A golden stream of light flipped, and he took off the golden foundation battle armor on his body. He pulled up his sleeves and revealed the merit token. The record on the merit token can't be false. Temple leader Chun, you can find someone to check it. We have killed the snake demon god Andamari, the green demon riding demon god Crow Cell, and the demon god Claw Cell. Moreover, I was the one who dealt the final blow. Hearing this, Chen Hongbao's expression couldn't help but change. The same was true for Sanshui Popo. The process of Long Haochen and the others killing the snake demon god Andamari had been narrated in detail by Chuning Er. However, they didn't expect that Long Haochen would be able to kill two demon gods again. Killing Andamari could be said to be a stroke of luck. However, could it be that every time he killed a demon god, it would be a stroke of luck? Moreover, what Long Haochen said was correct. According to the rules of monster hunters, they were already qualified to obtain a title. Moreover, they didn't have to go through the evaluation of Monster Hunter's rank. This title would follow them forever. To be able to become a member of a titled rank Monster Hunters, this glory even surpassed the status of the Temple leader. After all, the Temple leader was the ruler and commander, or in other words, the controller. However, a titled rank demon hunter was an absolute hero in the Temple League. Chen Hongbao's expression slightly loosened. He subconsciously asked, "Then what is your current title?" Long Haochen said in a deep voice, "When we left the southeast fort, I had already asked Xiao Yonghao of the Warrior Temple to act as a witness and formally apply for a title to the Alliance. In the past, when we were at the Exorcist Mountain Pass, we saw the demon gods fallen monster hunters. At that time, Temple leader Chen Zidian asked me if I was willing to inherit their title in the future. I refused. A simple demon god of slaughter couldn't bring peace and development to humanity. At that time, my companions and I decided on the future title. This title will be called Light of Dawn.